this meeting to order. The board members, Bill DeLay, Deborah Conant, Chris Paff is in person, Bill DeLay, Deb Conant, and who is the other? Myself and David Atkins will be calling in remotely pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, MGL C.30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This public hearing of the Planning Board of Westwood is being conducted by way of remote participation. We have limited in-person attendance of members of the public not to exceed 25 persons, and we've also attempted to create at least 6 feet of space between all attendees. The public may view this meeting that is being streamed by Westwood Media Center while in progress on television and on Westwood Media's YouTube. If you wish or speak to ask a question, board members, applicants, staff, and consultants, please use the conference number. For members of the public attending this meeting virtually, will be allowed to make comments for public hearing items if they wish to do so during the portions of the hearing for public comment by calling 781-251-2581. So again, the public can call in for public comment for public hearing items by calling in 781-251-2581. And as far as the best way to stay informed of all meetings, events, and emergency notifications is to go to the town's website at www.townhall.westwood.ma.us and click on the Notify Me on the home page. So now I'll go through the procedures. So again, welcome to the Planning Board meeting. This meeting is video recorded by Westwood Media Center. If anybody else wishes to record the meeting, please identify yourself so that the audience is aware. So please sound out to me now if you are going to record this. Hearing none. As a friendly reminder, please turn off your cell phone ringers. Also, for those that have dialed in, perhaps you can mute your phones. That might make the audio quality a little bit better. Obviously, if you wish to speak, then turn your mute off so that we can hear you. The meeting will be civil, and all people will be treated respectfully. This includes no clapping, booing, or interruptions by the audience.
Has left the conference.
In the event of a disruption, the chair will give a warning the first time, and if it occurs again, the individual will be requested to leave the meeting. The format of the meeting will be when an item is called, the applicant will come forward and present. In this case, some applicants may be dialing over the phone and present their application to the board. The board will proceed to staff comments. The board members will ask questions of the applicant. For public hearing items, the public will be given an opportunity to comment, and that telephone number was stated earlier. Items that are not a public hearing, the opportunity for public hearing will be at the discretion of the chair of the planning board. When it is time for the public comment period, the chair will call those wishing to speak to the podium to use the microphone. Or if you are dialing in, we will hear you through the phone that you're dialing in through. Once you're speaking, please identify yourself for the record, and please direct all comments and questions through the chair. All people are given the opportunity to speak in certain situations that are public hearings, but in the interest of times and fairness, repetitive or off-topic comments may be cut short. And Abby, there was another instruction for people dialing in, isn't there? Where there is a queue.
Just when you get to the public comment period, you should repeat the line for people to call in. That's the 781-251-2581 number.
Okay.
I think I'll just check with Nora. If the line goes right to voicemail, it just means that there's another call being taken. But then after that, it'll call back and come through to you.
Okay.
So this is
Yeah, so
Nora.
I'll give it.
Just to clarify that if someone calls
Sure.
the public call-in line, it can only take one call at a time. If there's someone on the line and you call, you will get a message for Abby's voicemail. Do not leave a voicemail. Hang up the phone and call again when the line is free.
Okay. Great. And so at this point, I will go through who I heard call into the line set up by Abby for board members and applicants. So I heard William DeLay call in.
Attorney Thomas O'Laughlin
has joined the conference.
Attorney
Yes.
Thomas O'Laughlin is on the line. We also have Attorney Ralph on the line.
David Johnson, Norwood Engineering.
Has joined the conference.
David Johnson, I'm making note of that. Attorney Ralph, can you hear me? So was it Thomas Ralph?
Thomas
that called
Ralph.
in? Great.
Has
Great.
left the conference.
Abby, you called in. Chris Paff is there in person. David Atkins, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Merrick, I heard you call in.
Yes,
Deborah
I can
Conant-
hear you.
Deborah Conant, can you hear me? And Deborah Conant, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Great, I can.
Okay.
And then I heard Cindy Peterson from Brigham and Women.
Yep.
Jillian Carroll Carey, and David Johnson. Is there anybody else who dialed in that I did not state your name?
Attorney
Mike
Horn.
Sinesi.
Okay, so I heard Attorney Horn. And then who is the
And-
second?
Thomas Ralph.
Thomas Ralph.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, sorry about that.
special
Has joined the conference.
is special counsel to the planning board in attendance. I haven't heard her name.
Yeah, so is Attorney Goldberg on the line? Or in the room?
She's not in the room. I would expect her to join the call when we get to the agenda item that she's representing the town on.
Okay, great.
And Mike Sinesi, DSK.
Great, thank you, Mike. Anybody else on the line? Great, and then as far as so that takes care of the line. Abby, do we need to do anything else for the line as far as keeping track of individuals? Is that who you expected?
No, this was everyone that I expected.
Okay, great. Okay, so at this point we will go into the agenda. So let me pull up the agenda. And the very first item on the agenda is Brigham and Women. So if the applicant is available to present their information.
Good evening, members of the board, Nora, Abby. Thank you for providing us time tonight to return to ask for a determination of consistency for a PDR approval for a 30,000 square foot medical office building, which was approved in May of 2017. Conditioned on that approval was a return for further review of elements of a 50,000 square foot expansion. We have, as of right, 80,000 square feet total building area to develop, and we are seeking the entirety of the additional 50,000 square feet for development. Pursuant to that, in February of 2020, we filed our application for determination of consistency. And I I'm going to move this along very quickly. I'm going to explain very generally, and then go into, call on Brian McKenna from Canon Design to be available for further detailed responses for, of the 50,000 square feet we are seeking, it is to continue to broaden our array of caregivers for primary and specialty care. And we are adding additionally now, seeking a permit to add ambulatory surgery. Day surgeries is another way to refer to that. And then for an expanded imaging platform. And we as well recognize that in order to comply with the code for a number of spaces to support the expansion, we will be building a structured parking garage adjacent and connected by bridge to the expanded side. And we are showing, a simple representation of that on plan now. And I'll offer to Brian to come up and to handle questions and to tell you a little bit more about the design.
Good evening, members of the board via phone and Mr. Chairman. My name is Brian McKenna with Canon Design Architects. We were the architects for Phase 1, as Steve had mentioned, and we'll be walking through quickly these slides for Phase 2 to prove our consistent design with the initial intent. The image on the screen right now, just so you know, every plan that you see will always have University Ave to the north, the Amtrak tracks to the bottom, or the T station to the bottom, the hotel to the right, and that condo development to the left. Just the orientation of the plans are that way. Nora? The plan that is up now, you'll see, has a red outline. That is the initial gray blue blocks are what was 3 years ago in 2017, what we came here envisioning for Phase 2. The red outline is what is being currently drawn. You'll notice the garage is a little more efficient in its stacking and its layout. We have Walker Parking Consultants on board giving us a very efficient garage. And as Steve mentioned, the bridge to the still 50,000 square foot MOB Part 2. This is the ground floor plane. Starting from the left side of the sheet, you'll see the garage at its ground floor level. The new Phase 2, as Steve indicated, that would house an expanded radiology department, which would include a CT and MRI services, and then the existing functions in Phase 1, which is a few X-ray and clinic and urgent care. The second floor at this level is an extension of the clinic rooms, which is nothing more than doctor's office space. The third floor is the ambulatory day surgery unit with 4 small procedures, 4 ORs, and the proper prep recovery as required. This is also the floor that has the connection to the garage to ease that patient population for a direct connect from their surgery. And then the fourth floor is more clinics to support the remainder of the building. Rooftop is similar to the Phase 1, where we have mechanical units on top to serve the spaces, and we have enclosed them in the same corrugator, same screening system that we had Phase 1 on top. This sheet is the elevations from 2017 of what we came here and what we thought Phase 2 may look like. On the top is the view from the MBTA Amtrak. On the lower, in the middle left is the view from the condo side of the property. The north elevation is from the hotel side, and the bottom one is the front of the building. You'll see on this sheet, this is the new elevations. We've oriented them same as the last to make it easy to see the consistency. At the top is the elevation from the tracks. The only difference here being the separation between the garage and the building and that bridge space. The one on the middle left, which is facing the condos, which has the more efficient garage layout and the proper landscaping that has been discussed. The one to the right of that sheet in the middle where it says north elevation of the garage, that is if you chopped at the bridge and looking at that side of the garage face, which is the elevator stair tower in the middle, and the garage functions on either side. The south elevation of Phase 2 is the part of the MOB building that would face the garage. It has limited windows, as looking at the garage is not always that desirable. It also program space aligns with aligns with the space that has no windows, and it makes good planning sense. The north elevation is looking from the hotel, so you see Phase 1 in the foreground and Phase 2 lighter in the background. The more important elevation is the front elevation, where we've continued the same materiality, the same language in a very geometric notion for Phase 2. We think clean and simple in this square element relates to the angled facade at the existing building, which leads to the higher mass, and then the garage next to it. These are some renditions, images from 2017 of what we thought the complete. On the left is more Phase 1 as it stands alone, and on the right is the completed building. Updated images, where at the top is the completed building.
There is some static on the line. If folks could put their lines on mute, that might help. Thank you.
Again, at the top of this sheet is the updated rendering with a focus on the new Phase 2 in the lower left, and then the rear elevation, which is very similar to the elevation we presented in 2017. I believe all elevations are consistent in massing and language. We can skip this one, it's technical detail. I think we're gonna skip that one too. I don't want to get into too much. The intent, just for those, we went past some details. The design of the building, the envelope, is the same details as used in the first phase. I don't think,
You don't need these. Brian.
no. If you could find the ones with the material, that, my understanding, a lot of this consistency is the exterior material and image of the building, that we had to come back and make sure it was consistent with what we presented before. So there we are. So this is the material board. We are fortunate, we've contacted a lot of the manufacturers, and a lot of the materials we used are still in circulation. So our intent is to match the materials of Phase 1 in Phase 2. We are introducing a third, we'll call it rain screen color, just because of the mass of the building. We wanted to add, that's that darker gray up top that comes up in smaller bands in between the windows of the square. But for all intents and purposes, it is the same color palette as we've used on Phase 1. You'll see to the far left, that is the garage relative to the whole material palette, so it's in that gray family. And if you go to the next. Oh. Okay.
That seems to be it on that slide.
Okay, well, there was one with the garage. Okay. Well, for the intents of the garage, the majority of the garage is a precast concrete, which we're utilizing a form liner. You'll see in the upper left-hand corner, creates a textured look on the garage, so it's not just a flat face garage. We also, at the elevator stair tower, will utilize the same metal from the mullions of the windows as we did on the MOB, and the same number 4 maroon, I'll call it plum color panel, and any insert panels there. So the materials from the Phase 1, Phase 2 MOB building will be carried through into the garage.
Did you want to show the landscape plans or?
Did we have that? This is not the presentation we were,
Yeah, it's not, there's the landscape deck, but it's not illustrated, I don't think.
yeah, there was,
Components of the consistency review materials that are uploaded?
yeah, we're missing that one site plan with the red lines pedestrian piece.
Would you like to use your thumb drive?
Sure. Next one. There's the next one, yes. So what's on the screen now is the completed or anticipated completed landscape plan and site plan. I'll say the red arrows, the thick red arrows are the vehicle traffic, where someone would come down Brigham Way, they would turn into the drop off their loved one, and then proceed out to the garage or go direct from the access road to the garage. There are red dashed lines on this plan that indicate the pedestrian paths. We know as part of the University Ave project that pedestrian connections was important from phase 1 all the way through phase 2. So we have several paths that will connect from the backside of the Marriott over by the T and across through the new green space in the center and connect folks to the rest of the development. The landscaping is consistent with screening some of the garage around the outside with some plant and vegetation. We've also gone into, you'll notice, slightly into that green space in the middle to provide more of a handicap access and a ramp sidewalk, and have worked with Paul Sancada and his team as to replanting, reusing, but connecting to that path to stay within the character of that park. These are the same plans we just went through. But at the end, there you go. Here's the garage. So as I said, the precast concrete with a textured form liner. In some of the open areas, on some of the large concrete surfaces, we'll utilize a screen and a vegetation, ivy of some sort growing on the building to help downplay the gray. And then the materials of the windows and any other element will be the same from phase 1 and 2 of the MOB. So I think at that, if there are any questions, we have our team here prepared to answer any.
Great, thank you. So is that the end of your presentation?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So at this time, Abby, we would look for any staff comments, and I know that we have the peer reviewer that may be able to come forward and provide some comments as well.
Sure. I think I would let the peer reviewer, Merrick and Mike, who are there from Beta Group, your
Right.
professional peer reviewer, and DSK Architects.
Thank you.
So this is Merrick Turner, for the record. Merrick Turner with Beta Group, and Mike Sinesi is also here with the architectural review. Well, I think what I'd like to do is just go through our sort of normal process here. As the applicant indicated in their remarks, the proposed development was originally granted approval in May 2017, and our review is essentially focused on whether there are any significant changes to the original plan, both from an architecture and a general sort of civil engineering site layout perspective. I believe the answer to that most succinctly is there really are not any significant changes. And I'd like to just have Mike run through the architectural comments that he has first, and then I can give the board a quick overview of the site civil components of the review. So, Mike, would you like to just sort of step into the architectural review there?
Thank you, Merrick. This is Mike Sinesi, architect with DSK Architects. for the record. The architectural review started with question number 1, which was related to the garage being open air and our concern for light pollution emerging from within the garage by vehicles passing in there. Wanted the applicant to consider how that light mitigation might be addressed with regard to the perimeter walls of the garage itself. I'm going to go through my items and then for brevity, and then allow the applicant to respond. So that was item B1. Item B2 addressed exterior materials and facade treatments and detailing. And there was a question regarding a particular material, shadow box material, and questioning where that particular material was used. Item B3, we were asking the applicant to clarify and make sure that all materials for the garage and physical samples for the exterior rooftop screening and the penthouse would be presented and shown and addressed as well. Item B4, we were looking to get a clarification on how the landscape screening was going to be used, in particular on the garage. And then we addressed items related to the rooftops. Item B5 relates to the height of the mechanical screen up on the roof, freestanding mechanical screen, and its relationship to the mechanical penthouse, the enclosed mechanical penthouse, and how the two related one to the other. And then lastly, with regard to design, item B6, we asked for more clarification on the precast panels being proposed for use on the garage itself and how those were being employed. So those were the architectural items.
So thanks, Mike. So what I'd like to do is just summarize quickly the site civil elements of the beta review, and then just hand that back to the board for any questions. So just sort of summarizing each section, in terms of street design and traffic design, the vehicular access in and around the site is essentially the same as that was presented in 2017, with the main access via the Brigham driveway from University Ave, and then circulation in and around the building, similar to what was intended in the 2017 concepts. The overall parking count for the parking lots, including garage, is consistent with both ITE guidance and standards used in the development as a whole. One item we would note is that the garage, formerly in the 2017 application, did have an entrance to the rear. That has been eliminated as we understand it, and now there's a single entrance in and out of the garage at the front. And one of the clarifications we'll be looking for from the design applicant is just that the appropriate capacity is there from the garage. In terms of space size, the size is okay, consistent with town regulation, both in terms of the surface parking and garage parking. Perhaps one of the more significant comments relates to construction and constructability, and it is how is temporary parking handled during the construction period where surface parking is lost and the garage may or may not be built at that time. So which the applicant has indicated they are in the process of planning for. In terms of public safety, essentially in public safety, we're really looking for the fire department just to verify that they are satisfied with the overall emergency access to and around the site, which we understand Abby is working with the fire department to get that confirmation. And also in terms of the general placement of hydrants and so forth, that they're satisfied with the location and type and number. So more of a confirmation than anything else. Stormwater, regarding stormwater management, the major infrastructure was reviewed and approved for the full build project in 2017. There really are no changes to the stormwater, so the stormwater as proposed remains compliant with the stormwater management standards required for the development. In terms of connectivity in and around the site, and I'm really referring to pedestrian connectivity here. Again, the site as a whole is essentially unchanged from 2017. There is one small modification where there was formerly a pedestrian access which connected with a park closer to the entrance to the garage, and that has gotten moved a little bit to the east, so to the north, with a new connection to the park created more or less opposite the main entrance to the Phase 2 building. We don't see an issue with that. They've provided good connectivity with some small revisions to the park. It's merely just pointing out that there's a small change there. In terms of visual mitigation and screening, the plans include a range of ornamental and native drought-tolerant plantings at appropriate densities, massings, and coloring, which should provide for some multi-season interest. In terms of screening equipment, there's a dumpster located at the rear easterly side, which is surrounded by a cedar fence. Rooftop units are also screened with corrugated screens. A second transformer has been sited in the rear of the building as part of the expansion, and the applicant also now proposes an emergency generator also sited to the rear of the building at the midpoint of the Phase 2 extension, roughly speaking. In terms of screenings and plantings around the garage, we like and we would encourage as much greening as possible, both in front of the garage, particularly on the condo, the side facing the condo, which is the overall southerly side of the garage facade. We understand from some recent responses to comments that there may be some concerns by the fire department relative to some of the screening proposed on the building itself, and perhaps the applicant may talk a little bit more about that. But we certainly like and would encourage as much screening as we possibly could around the garage structure. Lighting looks generally okay. We do want to understand one of the light levels in the surface parking, which may simply be just a result of the way the calculation has been done, but if a change is required, it would be a minor change. Spill prevention and response. Revision of the O&M plan should be considered to account for any changes that relate to the building operation in terms of hazardous material storage, and the fact that now there is an emergency generator. That just needs to be acknowledged, so certainly some administrative updating there is required. And we'd also note that that aspects of the O&M may need to be brought forward relative to handling of hazardous materials, which I understand generated a special permit need in the prior application. In the past, the O&M plan has generally been dealt with the occupancy permit, and perhaps that could be a consideration this time through, with the exception perhaps of the hazardous materials considerations. And in terms of signage, the current application includes documentation which indicates the intended locations of signage on the exterior of the actual full build structure for Phase 2 in the garage, but there's no information yet in terms of directional signage, and at the appropriate time, some information should be supplied just for compliance of that Again, in the past, that has generally been handled with a condition and administrative review later on. The other criteria in our memorandum, energy efficiency, construction waste management, water efficiency, and so forth, are generally resolved as part of the building review. So overall, we do not see a lot of changes, a lot of difference from the original 2017 application. Most of our comments we expect we're going to be able to adequately work through and resolve in preparation for a second meeting, second presentation to the board in the next week or two, as that becomes scheduled. So that's what I have, and if there's any questions from myself or Mike, obviously we'd be glad to answer those.
Excellent, thank you. And so, as I will do for roll call voting, I'll call on the members of the board by continuous seniority, and then by alphabetical, followed by me. So David Atkins, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I think the only comment I have is to reiterate the Pedestrian and Bike Safety Committee's comments, which is to ask that the crosswalks be raised so that they are the crosswalks maintain the same level as you go from one part to another, and when they cross the road, they should be raised so that it creates a little bit of a bump for cars that are going across that. And I do recall I think the original plans had an entrance in the garage in the back that also created a problem because of the sidewalk back there. So I think if they can make it work with just the one entrance now, that's probably better. Otherwise, it looks like things are pretty consistent with what we saw the last time around. That's all I have to comment.
Great. And then Deborah?
I couldn't get off mute. A couple of questions here. So will we be provided with an updated spill prevention response plan?
This is Merrick here. Yes, I think the answer to that is yes. Typically, the O&M plan has been dealt with in parallel with the certificate of occupancy. The O&M plan for this is fairly straightforward, and I wouldn't expect a lot of change, even from the fact that there's an emergency generator here. It is gas-fired, and the building department is certainly reviewing that. They may have approved it at this moment of time, and Abby may have an update on that. The only thing I would note would be there was a materials handling plan, hazardous materials handling plan related to I think basically the pharmaceuticals that were on site and how they would be handled and stored. And I suspect that is something that would be provided in the near term. But the overall O&M plan would be updated, but from a board perspective, could wait.
Also, the traffic study was done in 2017. Can we get an update with how the numbers factored in from with the new building that you already built and what you had anticipated, and if there'll be any changes in that traffic?
Yeah, so just in terms of an overall planning perspective, that the traffic for the site and the original master plan permit for the site did anticipate this building in its full build-out form. So the actual traffic that would be added by the structure is already considered in the overall design and therefore should not present operational issues. So there wouldn't necessarily be an update to the traffic model because the original analysis contemplated this full build-out.
So you're not going to look at exactly what the traffic, if there's been an increase in what you had anticipated with the first building, whether there was more traffic than you anticipated that might affect the traffic from the second building being built.
We could certainly take a look at that. We could talk to our traffic folk and see if there were any concerns there. I don't know if Brigham has any data about what's going to and from that initial building, but that's certainly something that an assessment could be made of.
So what I'm guessing then is that you sort of combined both buildings. You didn't separate them and say, well, this building we anticipate this much, this building will anticipate that much. Because what I'm looking at right now is the water usage calculation for the buildings. I'm wondering if it's on spot for what you anticipate for the first building, and was it over, was it under, and how much will be carried over to the next building? Will that add to the water usage? You're following me on that one?
Yeah, so in terms of the water usage, usually that's a calculation that relates to the sewer design. I don't know if anyone there is from NED in terms of their site group to perhaps respond to that, but that's certainly something we could follow up with them. There was, for the site plan in general, there was, and this is, I'm going back to now the master plan permit. The overall project had to establish something which was referred to as a water balance, and that basically compared demand to recharge to the overall aquifer, and there was a significant credit in terms of the net usage of the development as a whole versus the net recharge that the development would supply to the aquifer. And in general, the calculation is a fairly conservative one, so I wouldn't anticipate an issue with water usage, even if it was slightly higher.
Okay.
But we will follow that up with the applicant
Okay.
and with NED.
So my final question is, maybe I missed it on the presentation. Is there a specified loading and unloading zone?
Excuse me, if I could just ask if you would speak a little louder?
Oh, sure. If you could, I don't know if I missed it in the presentation, but I'm looking, is there a specific loading and unloading zone for the materials that you'll need?
I can certainly speak to that, unless someone from the applicant side wants to talk to that.
All right, we're happy
Why
for
don't I
you to
take it
explain
first?
it.
Yeah, okay, was that Brian?
That was Steve Merritt.
Okay, Steve, sorry.
All right, sounds, Merrick, like you're going to have us explain it.
Yeah, I think so.
This is now Brian. Yes, there is an area that's in the back of the building, and it is a small area for pull-up for box trucks with a double door. It is not a loading dock or that sort of feature. It is more just-in-time deliveries for a building of this size.
All right, thank you.
Deborah. So, Christopher Pat.
Merrick, why I'm at the mic, I can tell you, I think you were discussing earlier, we couldn't hear it very loudly, the generator and I think the containage or permit you were saying. We have provided Mr. Perkins with the design and how we are using a natural gas generator, and we do have the letter from him saying that it is okay and acceptable.
Okay.
Great. So, Chris Paff, if you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a few, mostly regarding the parking garage. Is this a 24/7 parking garage? Does it close at night? And what are the hours if it is closing?
This is a medical office building, and the urgent care that was approved separately last year, I believe, Partners Urgent Care, is open the latest at 9 o'clock and closes down at 9 o'clock, 7 days a week. there's no activity other than people leaving after 9 p.m. and none anticipated.
So the parking garage would also be for the urgent care as well?
The parking garage is to suit the whole facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was referred to as light pollution. What efforts are being made in the design to keep headlights from cars going through from shining into the condominiums, the homes nearby?
So all the fixtures in the garage have what they call shields, dimmable, to kind of keep that light spill. We have, as Mike pointed out, one of their comments, and we have recently looked at it, we're looking at a screening element because there are slight, they call them transition ramps, when you go up, and there's 2 floors where those transition lamps will just get over the 3-foot, get over the wall of the garage. So right now we are currently looking at a screening material there, similar to the other areas of the building.
Okay. You had mentioned earlier that this was intended for, I think you called it day surgery, but you used the word ambulatory. Are ambulances anticipated? You just put the word in my mind, so I wanted to ask the question.
This is scheduled surgeries, knees, hips, things that can be scheduled that are predictable, quick recoveries, those kinds of patients. No overnight stays. This is not a hospital. There is no activity here that requires hours after 9 p.m. The medical office building itself closes generally well ahead of 9 p.m. And it's anticipated that there'll be some Saturday hours for the medical office building itself, but there is absolutely no nighttime activity. This is everybody goes home generally by 6 o'clock in the medical office building.
Okay. And with regard to the lights within the parking garage, are they continuously lit until closing, or are they motion activated? How is that scheduled?
I don't think we've settled on that,
Haven't-
Brian.
Okay.
Have we?
I don't think that has been settled on, but I can imagine a timer
Okay.
that will trigger off.
Yeah.
Once everyone's exited safely.
Will it be a manned parking garage, or is it all automated payment and?
It will be,
there be any
it will not
security?
be a manned garage. It will be, we're debating whether to put a parking gate on it, just to discourage people using the parking lot for other than the medical office use. And we're planning for that. That's the only controls that we envision for the parking structure itself.
Yeah, that was a concern I had with people utilizing it for train.
Oh,
If
it's a concern of ours as well,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I noticed, unless I read this wrong, in 2017 it appeared you had the parking garage up next to the medical building. And now it's split with a walkway in between, and you depict landscaping there. To my eye, it doesn't look like that's going to get a lot of sunlight there. So I don't know what the longevity of actual green plants would be there. But I figured I'd throw it out there because it looks like a recipe for things to just kind of die.
Well, we have one of the best landscape architects around,
Okay.
and he is here, and I won't put him on the spot too much, but we've certainly considered that's a difficult area for Son or
Okay,
lack
and I
thereof.
don't necessarily need an answer, it's just something that comes to my mind
Yeah.
right now in looking at this. It's a concern. I know you don't want it looking bad, and obviously neither do we, so.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure we're
We-
not setting
we-
ourselves up.
We've gone to the bridge concept. We think having it, particularly for the day surgery patients, it's an easier traverse from the parking garage along the same elevation into the 3rd floor. And it's a convenience item, and it will take a little pressure off the ground plane, too.
And the parking garage, it's entirely at grade or above?
That's
There's
right. No below grade.
Okay. All right. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Bill DeLay?
Yeah, I didn't hear this. Is this a fee-based garage? In other words, you're going to be charging?
We haven't decided on the fee structure yet. That'll come later, and that'll be in consideration of not making the garage an attractive nuisance for us for the train station. That's something we'll take up later. We have the capability to have cash machines that will, control access into the garage itself.
Okay, so this will be run by Brigham Women, or will they have an outside vendor running it?
This will be run by everything on the property, but will be run by Brigham and Women's Hospital.
Okay. Now, another question. Did you ever consider alternative energy or solar panels on that building?
We have considered solar panels. We're not in favor of them because we don't think that this particular property affords enough area for the PVs. We are pleased to be designing what we anticipate will be a LEED Silver building, and we'll be glad to provide that checklist if we haven't already to Beta, and we feel that the sustainability requirement for the building will be met adequately with the LEED Silver designation.
And the only reason I ask that is because you get a lot of sunlight down there.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very busy parking lot. Certainly, there's going to be nothing on the ground plane. The roof itself has got a lot of mechanicals on it, and the parking structure itself is not really big enough to provide the kind of array that would even sustain the garage itself electrically.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bill. And then as far as staging goes, is there going to be any effect on the overall current parking?
Meaning during construction?
Yeah. So just continuous maintenance of parking.
I take it you mean during construction. We have a construction.
During construction, exactly.
Yeah, we have a temporary parking plan during construction that we're finalizing now. We intend to use an off-site property that we have set to agree on that would provide extensive parking via shuttle for contractor personnel and for staff. That would provide the folks that would come in the morning and return in the afternoon, head home in the afternoon. There's only 2 trips associated with that cohort, and so they would be assigned parking at this off-site location that's reasonably close to our site on University Ave, and that we would maintain pretty much the entirety of the existing parking throughout construction, controlled by valet for the duration of the construction until the parking structure is finished. So that would be a duration of about a year's time where we would need the off-site parking, and as I say, we've arranged for that, and we feel very comfortable that our patients will be well served and there won't be any queuing beyond our site on Brigham Way, or certainly not beyond at any time.
Great, thank you. And then, Abby, this is not a public hearing, but are we going to be taking questions from the public for this particular item?
Yes, you can. I mean, it's up to you. It's not a public hearing, but you can ask for public comments.
Yeah, so again, for this and other public hearing items, to dial in to 781-251-25. And is there anyone on the line at this point?
There is not.
Okay. So at this point, Abby, for this particular item itself, so we're looking to continue this hearing. We're as far
yeah.
as there are some items that are outstanding. Is there any
Yeah.
other guidance we need to provide the applicant?
The applicant had started working on a response, but they I'd recommend time for them to be able to respond again in writing and come back to you with revised plans. My recommendation was originally for the next meeting on April 7th, which is a Tuesday. That would be based, again, at a Carby Street, and we would try, at that time, we are working towards a virtual and remote meeting. Hopefully, we'll be up and running by that time with a new software.
Okay, great. And then as far as, does the applicant feel that they need to provide any other closing remarks or comments?
We do not tonight, no.
Okay, great. And then any of the board members, any further discussion on this matter?
We're receiving a call.
Okay.
Hello? Please give your name.
Fran Fusco.
Fran Fusco is on the line.
Hi, it's Fran Fusco.
Fran, would you please turn down the sound on the TV or computer you're watching? There's a bit of a delay.
Okay, hold on a second. Sure, I'll mute it.
Okay, terrific.
Yes. Hi, I had a question as far as, I know the whole Brigham facility that we're building and has been built with the urgent care. Has there been a determination on whether there's different kinds of chemicals used with this new facility that have not been approved through the first building that was built, where it's so close to our water wells?
So if I could paraphrase that question, the caller is asking if there will be new or different chemicals other than those that were approved in the first phase by special permit.
Yeah, we're going to refresh our O&M manual entirely and resubmit. And once we've gone through a complete programming effort with all our clinical groups, and we intend to start on that this spring, and it'll be it probably won't be submitted until the June timeframe. But at that time, the entirety of our chemical storage will be renewed in an O&M manual, which will include not only the chemicals themselves described as hazardous materials in the ordinance, they will be included, and as well, and we will also include storage, how they will be conveyed from the truck to the building, and how they'll be safely stored within the building itself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And any other calls coming through?
There are not other calls yet. If anyone else is interested in calling in, they should call the number 781-251-2581.
Great. And then Abby, do we need to make a motion to continue to April 7th, or can we just add this to the agenda for that date? Add it.
Let's see. Can I just ask Nora? Nora, what do you think?
So
you need to make a formal motion?
This is not a public hearing. You don't need to make a motion, but for clarity, so everyone understands that it will be continued to the 7th, I would advise that you do.
Okay.
So I would I would entertain a motion to that effect.
I make a motion that we can.
Motion to continue.
Go ahead, Deb.
to continue the hearing to Tuesday, April 7th at 50 Carvey Street.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Do we have a second? So we have
Second.
a motion, a second. Any further discussion on this matter? And hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse
I
me?
have to do a
All
roll
roads
call.
must be by roll call.
So by the same order. So Dave.
Aye.
So Deborah.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
And I myself. So that's unanimous. Great. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item.
Right, thank you very much.
number
Thank you,
2
members.
On the agenda, that's 230 High Street. It's a limited environmental
Cindy
impact
Peterson.
Has left the conference.
and design review, an earth material movement public hearing. So is the applicant available to present their application?
Mike Sinesi.
Has left the conference.
Brian, you might want to hold on for a few seconds. We're losing a lot of people.
Has left the conference.
Yep.
And we hear it every time somebody leaves.
Yep. So the applicant for 230 High Street, if you wanted to state your name.
The applicant is
hall?
not in the room. I'll check in the hallway.
Yeah, thank you.
One thing I'd like to observe, just so you know, the video is about maybe 20 seconds delayed. So I think that worked out fine. And the last time there was a phone number on the screen, which Fran Fusco was able to see and call in. But just so you know, there's like a good 20-second delay.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, the applicant is in the room. The chair has called the application for 230 High Street. And I'm receiving another call. Hello? Please state your name. Oh, the party hung up.
Yeah, that's fine. So if 230 High Street, the applicant could please just state your name and provide your presentation to the board.
Daphne?
David Johnson. David Johnson is here from Norwood Engineering. We prepared the application and the site plan that's being considered tonight, and I will go over the details of the site plan.
Yeah, Dave, the audio is a little bit not perfect from your end, so if you could just alter how you're speaking into the microphone where you are.
Before he does his?
Okay, I'll try it again. How is that any better?
It does
Excuse
sound a
me?
little better.
Excuse me, David. I believe Daphne
Yeah.
would like to speak first.
That's not a problem. Just let me know when I should prepare my presentation.
My name is Daphne Kraut-Gordon. I'm the founder and president of Toward Independent Living and Learning, TIL Incorporated. It's a nonprofit human service agency. I assume you can hear me?
And
Okay.
sorry to interrupt quickly, but if you could speak a little closer to the microphone or a little bit louder,
Touch
it
it.
just sounds a little dim.
That's your call. So I guess no.
How's that? Is that better?
I mean, it was fine the way it was. It just could be a little bit better.
Yeah, just a little closer.
I'll hold it. How's that?
Just a minute. Yeah, you can hold it. That's fine.
Okay. Now can you hear me? Yes? Okay.
Sure, you can continue.
Yeah.
All right. Daphne Kraut-Gordon, founder and president of Toward Independent Living and Learning, TIL Incorporated, which is a nonprofit human service agency located in Dedham, Massachusetts. I started it in 1980, so we have been around for 40 years. And the purpose of our existence is to develop community-based programs for people with intellectual disabilities, acquired brain injuries, and other related disabilities along autism spectrum disorders. We run 57 different group residential settings throughout Massachusetts, as well as additional ones in New Hampshire, Nashua, New Hampshire, Greater Nashua, New Hampshire, and also vocational programs in Massachusetts, a culinary program, culinary training program, and many clinical services to support families and individuals, starting with young children and going through the lifespan. The proposal for tonight is to develop a 5-person single-family residence for 5 individuals with an acquired brain injury. It is going to be funded by the Department of Developmental Services. We have an agreement and a contract from them. They are individuals who are currently living in nursing home situations, and it's really very inappropriate for them to stay there. So what we create is completely individualized family living with 5 individuals who are always there, who get together and really create a new family for themselves. In some cases, they may wind up going back to their family situation depending on how much training we offer and what their life situation is. There is always staff that is in the location, because part of what we provide is really training and opportunities for rehabilitation and getting back to a situation where they might have led before their particular problem that got them into an acquired brain injury situation. At all times, there would probably be 2 staff that are in the residence. The individuals don't drive, so as far as traffic impact, car impact, there's really very little within the location. So the plan, as we'll go through the design between the engineer and the architect, is really to develop a house that looks and fits very well into the neighborhood. All of our homes, our 57 homes, we're very conscious of making sure that it fits into the neighborhood, both aesthetically and also being part of the neighborhood. So we're part of the community resources, the community services. Many of the people volunteer and really become a vital part of life. We used to, in fact, have a house in Westwood 15 years ago, and we ran that for 15 years, so we're quite familiar with the town, and Dedham is very close by. There are 3 structures currently on the location. The front structure is a very big barn, excuse me, which at this point we've decided to leave intact. We have no plans for using it, but since it's not necessarily a historic building, but it is something that the area is very used to, and we thought if we could just rehab it a little bit with some new paint, that it would just be a very nice structure to maintain. But as I said, we have no use for it. There's also 2 houses which will be taken down because neither house has any value as far as we can tell, as far as the structure. So we're just building a house from scratch. And there's one other small barn, which at this point we will look into whether it makes sense to keep it for no particular reason other than perhaps to keep the aesthetics. Once we have a chance to go into that barn, if it looks like we really need to demo it, the demo permit that we have applied for through Fox Hill allows us to take down all of the structures. So that's a summary of what I want to present, and if there are any questions at this point, or you want to leave questions after you hear from the engineer and the architect.
Great, thank you for your presentation. Abby, are there any comments from staff or from any of our expert reviewers?
Actually, I think David Johnson, the project engineer, did he want to go through his site layout?
Sure, that's fine. So, David,
Sure.
you're able to go.
Yes, everybody able to hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. As Daphne said, this project is located on High Street, and there's several buildings on the property that will be removed. We've used, to the maximum extent that we could, the existing driveway to the property as the access to the proposed building. This allowed minimizing the amount of stone wall disruption and the preservation of some significant trees along High Street. We come into the property, there's about a 14-foot change in elevation from High Street to the rear of the property, which is the reason that we've applied for the earth material moving permit, we are needing to bring fill into the rear of the property in order to elevate the rear of the property to accommodate the stormwater runoff, subsurface infiltration, to allow the sewer to be discharged into the municipal sewer system by gravity, and to prepare the access driveway to meet slope requirements for pedestrian access. The site plan provides 6 parking spaces. They're on the westerly side of the property. They are screened from High Street. They're approximately 50 feet back from the layout of High Street, and the landscaping plan shows the edge of the parking lot screened with evergreen trees in compliance with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. Beta has reviewed the site plan and the stormwater design, and I don't believe they have any comments. They've also reviewed the earth material moving application, and I think they had one comment which we had already addressed in the submission, and that had to do with the testing of the soil and making sure that the soil coming into the site was not contaminated and tested. We've also been in front of the Conservation Commission on an initial basis. We kept that hearing open pending the review by the planning board, so that if there were changes made, we didn't need to re-advertise and reopen that hearing. In order to try to reduce the amount of grading on the site outside of the fill that was needed to prepare the driveway, we're using retaining walls around the northerly side of the building to reduce the amount or eliminate the amount of grading on the northerly side of the building. The northerly side of the building does have a single-family residence located on it, which is the reason that we've used the retaining wall to reduce the grading and to maintain as much vegetation as possible. The other 2 sides, the southerly and easterly, is land owned by Fox Hill Village. We're using residential post lighting to enhance the fact that this is a single-family residence. The fire department, we've worked with them closely, and they've proved the suitability of the access off of High Street and the ability to turn their vehicles around at the end of the driveway with a circular turnaround. Excuse me, we've submitted a landscape plan which provides, as I said, the buffer for the parking and landscaping around the building. In the rear of the site, we have pervious pavers as a patio to allow use of the rear of the site and reduce the amount of runoff, and again to buffer the adjacent property. I know that Brian is there to talk about the architectural element of this project and how it fits in with the site plan that we've put together. So I guess I would turn it over to him to go over the architectural design, and then be glad to answer any questions that the board might have on the site plan.
Okay, great. Brian, if you're available to do that, that'd be great.
Thank you. I have the 3 architectural drawings mounted on boards, but I think they're also part of the submittal package, so I don't know where the camera is here really, so.
Would you like the floor plans or the elevations
Floor plan
first?
would be great. My name is Brian Donahue. I'm principal of Donahue Architects. My office is in Quincy, Mass. The first view here is of the basic floor plan for the residence. It's approximately a little bit less than 3,000 square feet in gross area. It is a 5-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom
residence laid out on one level because of accessibility issues. The bathrooms are enlarged for people with disabilities that can negotiate them. And the bedrooms are basically 13 by 13, so they're generous, but they're not overly large. So the rest of it is laid out like a typical residence, and you can see that there's a kitchen, a working kitchen, and a living space. And this living space at the top of the page runs into an outdoor patio off the back. Each bedroom would have access to a walkway also from patio doors from the bedroom out into the exterior. There are also backup functions there. There's a half bath and a laundry, which the residents can use, as well as storage space and a small office for staff. Again, it's approximately 3,000 square feet, and we're showing in this iteration that it's directly connected to one of the existing barns, a smaller barn, which is to be determined in terms of what the function of that building was. I think we'll make an effort to see what the value of that is and what the structural stability of it is to tie into the final scheme, but that's, again, yet to be determined. In terms of if we could go to the elevations, that would be great. So, again, it's one story. It's a very traditional vernacular, as of many of the homes in Westwood are. It is at the highest point of the ridge is less than 20 feet tall, so it's not an imposing structure by any stretch. And you can see that it's a one-story colonial type design with some dormers to let light in from above and illuminate the spaces as best as possible for the residents. Traditional double-hung windows with mullions, architectural shingled roofs, very, very simple design. We'll be using clapboard siding and vertical siding at the base, possibly to ground the building a little bit. And this view shows the barn, which would hopefully paint and possibly rehab, but again, that's to be determined. As I mentioned before, this view shows the entryway, which is off the parking circulation. So, if residents needed to be dropped off or picked up in a van, it's very accessibly friendly. Other than that, it's fairly straightforward. It's David's drawings show where it is sited on the lot, and then in terms of the architecture, it's basically what I've explained to you, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I want to be brief, so if there are any questions about the architecture, I'd be happy to field them.
Great, thank you. So at this point, we'll ask any of the board members if they have any questions. So again, going in that same order. So David Atkins.
Yes, I have some energy efficiency questions. So what will be the fuel source? I think the existing house is like oil or propane or something, but what are your plans for that?
Again, it's very preliminary, but and we'll be investigating all types of fuel sources, but it probably will be oil at this point in time. So it will be conditioned. There'll be an air handler, and there'll be a boiler and an air handler, and probably a ductwork to heat and cool the facility, the house.
I'd just like to suggest at the southern exposure there might be an opportunity for solar panels and an air source heat pump. You have an opportunity to make it not rely on oil or propane. Could be a possibility.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be a possibility, and we can look into the feasibility of that as well. None of these decisions have really been made at this point in time, so I think going forward we'll be rolling up our sleeves to talk about building systems and how it's going to be heated and cooled. So.
And just to clarify, so are you proposing now the 5-unit or the 10-unit?
This is five bedrooms, and that's going to be
5 bedrooms. Okay. I don't have any other questions at this time.
And then Deb?
So my first question is related to the Historical Commission. Is that building no longer being demolished, or is it?
Which,
One that was under question.
there's a residence that's close to High Street that is being demolished, and in the rear of the site, next to the existing small barn, there's a house that is basically in such a state of disrepair that there's no value to that right now. So those two structures will be coming down. The large barn that you can see from High Street is remaining, as well as we hope the smaller barn to the north will be retained as well.
So also too, will there be any after like evening programs there, or will you be having any other teaching or educational programs there besides for the residents?
I'll defer to Daphne for that question.
No, the teaching goes on as part of residential living, but there isn't going to be anyone that's brought in for just teaching programs. The education happens through residential life, and that's what the staff concentrate on, but that's the educational component of it. Most of the people will wind up going out during the day, either for job development, or in some cases, people get jobs in some of our other homes, but it doesn't happen on site. And in other cases, they do stay there, and then they work on daily living skills, community skills, but it's not an educational site.
Okay, I was asking only because of the 6 parking spots, and when you look at the number of, I don't know how much help that you have, what the how many aides or employees, and then the number of visitors, whether that was adequate for that, which is why I was asking about whether there were going to be any evening programs for people outside of that facility.
No. There wouldn't be. There is a large amount of space also. We're not designating additional parking spaces at this point, but it's not that if they have guests, if they have friends, if they have a party, a gathering, there's certainly plenty of space on the grounds that we are going to be clearing and, making available. But as far as regular, the typical ratio would be for the 5 individuals, if they're all there, that 2 people are there, and they would be the ones that have the cars, and then a house van.
Okay. And have you considered fencing at all due to the proximity to 109?
That's certainly part of what we're considering, to make it both, shielded from the busy street, and to make sure that, it makes sense so that it looks good and that it's safe. There is a fence, well, there's actually not a fence right in front of the house. So that's part of the plan. As we develop it, we'll see what looks and fits best.
Okay, I'm looking at more at a safety issue, and I don't know what, in terms of the fire department, I support their decision. If you guys can do the sprinklers, that would be fantastic in terms of protecting those residents inside. So, but that's all I have for questions.
Great. And Chris Paff?
I have a question. You mentioned that you had a house in Westwood about 30 years ago? And you had it for
No,
15?
50, yeah, on Carroll Ave.
Okay. What happened to that house?
It was what was called a respite center, so families would be able to have their children go there for weekends, for vacations, for whatever, and the Department of Developmental Services, it must have been about 12 years ago, decided that was some site-based respite was something they were not going to fund any further. So they closed all site-based respites, and we just had to sell that house. It's not that that house was taken away from us. They just didn't support site-based respites for anybody. They instead...
A single-family home?
Yeah, it was just single, yeah. It was a single-family home. It had 5 bedrooms in it.
Okay.
It was a very big service to families. Families were very upset when the state made that decision statewide.
Do you have a typical stay duration for residents of this? I know it varies per...
Well, it actually doesn't. This is their home. So I would say the average of the 57 homes, people, maybe 5% in any given time, we help them to move to the next situation of independence. But for the most part, this really becomes their new family, their new surrogate family. With the acquired brain injury population in particular, and this will be the 6th home that we open, there is a little more movement because people really do have lives that they had to leave for one reason or another, and we work very hard to reintegrate them if possible. But quite honestly, the situation that they're in the years they've spent in nursing homes, that's unlikely.
And if you do have a vacancy, how do you fill it?
It's pretty much a closed referral system, so we work with DDS, Department of Developmental Services, and this area is covered by what's called the metro region. So they try and give as close proximity people who have meaningful ties to any particular area where a house is built. So they'll look at people that had some connections to Westwood, Dedham, the general area, and that's who they would give us the first referrals.
I see.
So we have a, probably 98% occupancy at all times.
And Nora, it's indicated there are 2 houses, and it's been reported that one is completely dilapidated. Do they both appear as single-family residences in our stock, our housing stock currently?
I believe one appears as a single-family residence and one may appear as a guest home or as an accessory structure. I don't know how it's calculated. I haven't looked that up.
Okay. I was just thinking of their numerator, denominator situation. And architectural, I think all the other questions have been answered. I just had one in looking at the renderings.
Join the conference.
The dormers, are they to a vaulted ceiling or just an attic?
Again, to be determined, I think we'd like to have those.
Could you step to the microphone? Sorry about that.
I think we'd like to introduce more light into those bedrooms, so we're thinking that would be, at least on the side where the dormers are, that would be vaulted, so the light could come into that space below.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
And then Bill Delay?
My questions are similar to Dave's. I think I just would like to see some alternative energy if possible. Again, solar panels or what you could do there to use alternative energy. And also, the walls, you're taking down some of the walls, is that correct?
No, we're putting up walls. There's no
The
wall.
walls,
Go ahead.
the walls that are there,
Do you mean the stone walls or the house walls?
There,
rounds. I'm not talking about the house walls. I'm talking about stone walls.
well, there are stone walls along High Street, which we're preserving. There is only one stone wall within the site, and that's along the northerly side of the barn that's staying, and that stone wall, retaining wall, is staying. The remaining walls that we're proposing for retaining walls are new, and they're along the northerly side of the site and go behind the proposed structure.
Okay, so you're going to maintain or keep the stone walls that are like 350 years old, correct?
Yes, as much as possible. We had to widen the driveway in order to satisfy the fire department's requirements for access to the site, but we're retaining as much as we can, and we're showing the stones to be relocated as radiuses on the driveway coming in, so they'll be reused on the site.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and so my comment, it echoes Dave Atkins with regards to renewable energy. So I'd like to see some effort being put into that. So at this point, I'd like to open it up to the public for any public comments that would come through. So I don't know if there's
If I could just read out that number again, anyone in the public who'd like to
Yeah, I
call,
have it.
the number is 781-251-2581.
And while we're waiting for that, also Abby, so we should go through the different conditions that are currently under discussion.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. So has anybody called in from the public line?
Not yet.
For 10 or 15 seconds. Allow that. And any more coming through?
There are no calls coming through. I understand there's been a suspension of the live streaming.
Yes.
So, Abby, do you want to walk us through the conditions for this? So we have a number of conditions that have been brought forward.
Right. In your packet, I had suggested, I had outlined 8 standard conditions. They're related to a general EIDR, Environmental Impact Design Review, and the Earth Material Movement application. I could summarize them. The first one I would suggest is that the parking shall be screened from view from High Street with the landscaping. And they're showing the yew bushes, as shown on the Nord engineering plan, should be installed prior to occupancy. Condition number 2 is about protection of the pavement on High Street to be protected during the construction work and the loading and unloading of material.
Yep. We can start there.
Condition number 3 is for a cross-drone entrance to help keep the site, any material on site before trucks leave the property. Condition number 4 is related to the construction hours in the town's general bylaws. Condition number 4 is about submitting a certification that the fill that's being imported doesn't contain any hazardous material, and that should be submitted, a certification from a professional should be submitted to the planning office prior to bringing in any of that fill. Condition number 6, that if there's any other permits and that may be required from other boards, such as the Conservation Commission or other agencies, the applicant is responsible for filing those permits. Condition number 7 is that the applicant is responsible to repair any damage that may be caused during construction to the town's right-of-way, with first coordinating and seeking approval from the town Department of Public Works. And then the last condition is a copy to keep a copy of the approved project plans and decision on the project site at all time during construction.
Thank you. And before we move forward, I just wanted to give the applicant an opportunity to respond to any of the questions or give any closing remarks based on the questions from the board.
No further comments from the applicant. My understanding is that the cable broadcast is working, but the YouTube channel is not. So in light of that, I recommend that the board continue the hearing, because some folks who may have been trying to tune in to the YouTube channel will have lost some of this hearing and will not have the opportunity to call in and make comments.
Sure. And have there been any other questions coming through that line while we were discussing other items?
There have been no questions, no calls through the line.
Okay, thank you.
Just as a point of information, there was no abutter or interested party, I believe, that spoke at the Conservation Commission hearing, which was held almost a month ago now, I guess. So there was no public comment at that.
Okay. And are there any board members are there any board members that have any further discussion on this matter? And so with that, I would entertain a motion if there's one on the floor.
Do we want to continue it to April 7th?
Abby, is there room on April 7th's agenda?
Yes, I'd recommend continuing to April 7th to allow time for public comment, since we've become aware of this delay in the live stream. So Tuesday, April 7th at 50 Carby Street, to allow time for public comment at that hearing.
I make a motion to continue to 47 at Carby Street for public comment.
We have a motion.
Second.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussions on the matter? Hearing none. So by roll call vote, so we go in the same order. David Atkins,
Aye.
Deb Conant,
Aye.
Chris Paff,
Aye.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well, so that's unanimous to move it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So moving to the next item on the agenda. So item number 3 is 72 Reservoir Road. It's an earth material movement public hearing. And is the applicant available?
David Johnson, Norwood Engineering.
Has left the conference.
And I'll give it a couple seconds.
Has left the conference.
Right here.
Jillian Caro Carey.
Has left the conference.
Okay. So is the applicant for 72 Reservoir Road available?
Yes, the applicant is here.
Great. We're ready when you are.
Good evening to the board. My name's John Walsh. I'm here on behalf of Walsh Brothers Building Company. I'm here for the earth material movement permit for 72 Reservoir Road. As of today, we've built a 4,600 square foot home. It's been approved by the Building Department and Conservation Commission of Westwood. The approved permit has resulted in a grade change of more than 15% slope, which triggers the earth material movement permit. It's our position that the home as built will not negatively impact any abutters. We share that position with Beta. We've also installed Cultec recharge systems, a swale, and a bioretention basin, further supporting our position. I'd also like to point out that our home is a great distance away from any abutters, as it's surrounded by woods. And that's pretty much it.
Is that the end of your presentation, or do you have anything further?
That's it.
And so, Abby, it looks like we've heard from, we've had Beta comments related to this item.
Yeah. Just a moment. They did review it. Hold on just a moment. And also to note that this house is already constructed. The applicant went forward with the construction, and it was discovered later on that there was some earth material brought into the site that exceeded was right around that 200 cubic yards, but because of the grading changes, that's what triggered this review.
Okay, great.
And Beta did have they did review the project and didn't have any outstanding conditions. They just recommended that the site be monitored for any construction damage that may be caused to the right of way, and to make sure the site was kept clean during construction.
Okay, great. And are there any other staff or consultant comments, or will that complete that?
The only other comment was that this project also received Conservation Commission review, so it is operating under an existing order of conditions.
Okay, thank you. And then going in the same order, so for board questions to the applicant, so David Atkins.
Yes, sorry, I just had to unmute there. I just wondered, could you kind of talk a little bit about, so was this a mistake that you, because the original permit didn't expect it to need earth materials movement or anything, and then I went out there and took a look at the site. It's a nice house. It is kind of built up on a...
Lauren Goldberg
has joined the conference.
So it's built up clearly, and was it just sort of just an oversight, or kind of what happened with that? Is to not realizing the need for a hearing ahead of time.
So that's exactly what that was. It was an oversight. We were not aware of the 15% slope grade change triggering the earth material movement bylaw. So that is why we didn't request one initially.
And is the slope? Is it basically just the area around? So there's like a low-lying area to the left of the house. Like if they're looking at the front of it, and then it's all a bunch of mulch and stuff that kind of builds up a sort of a platform there. That's essentially what the problem is, right?
That's correct.
I guess I don't really have any other questions. We get a lot of these, and always hate to have to approve something after it's already been done.
And so Deborah Conant, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just one. Do we know where the fill came from and whether it can be post-certified, or do we know anything about that?
So the fill came from a development of ours in Holliston, Mass. What we did was we took a piece of land which was all ledge, rock, and we blasted it and we crushed it. So basically it's rock with gravel mixed in.
And that was where your fill came from?
Yes.
That was my only question.
And so, Deb, you're done with your questions?
Yes.
Okay. Chris Path?
Abby, as a follow-up to that, does that meet our requirements for acceptable fill?
It's really up to you. The bylaw says that the planning board may require certification of the fill.
Okay. So that was one of the two comments I'm reading here from Beta, and the other was identify the manhole in the front yard.
Oh, so
Can you do that, please?
Yeah. Because the driveway is so long, the town requires a manhole for the sewer, just in case there's ever a
That's
problem.
the sewer line?
Yeah.
Like a clean out, basically.
Exactly.
Okay. No more questions.
And Bill DeLay, any questions?
No, they've asked the questions that I would ask, so, yep.
Yeah, the same. My questions have been answered as well. So at this point, if there are any, what is the situation with the comments from the public, Nora?
The YouTube channel is still not operating, so anyone who's watching this on cable TV would have the ability to call in. You can give out that phone number again. There are some people in the audience here. Okay, for the next agenda item. So there's no one present that's commenting on this, and no one has called in yet. I can give the number again for anyone who's watching on cable. It's 781-251-2581 if you'd like to call, and it's at the bottom of your screen. But if anyone is watching this looking for it on the YouTube channel, that channel is not streaming at the moment.
So for consistency, do we want to continue this as well for public comment?
I would recommend that.
Yes, yep. I think you should continue to Tuesday, April 7th at 7 p.m. at 50 Carby Street.
I'll make them.
Before we do that, Julie, does the applicant want to respond to any of the questions from the board, just to, or have any closing remarks?
I think I've answered them all.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to continue this hearing till April 7th at 50 Carby Street, or by whatever means we do.
And do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? So hearing none. So in roll call, David Atkins,
Aye.
Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Chris Paff,
Aye.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and aye for me as well. So that that's unanimous, 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving further in the agenda. So it's the next item is item 4, 35 Winter Street, Earth Material Movement, public hearing.
The applicants are here.
Christopher Coleman has joined the conference.
Would you like the applicant to begin?
Yes, absolutely.
Good evening. My name is David Santos with Prime Engineering, joined today by my client, Jillian Karokari. Actually, if we could pull up the revised site plan, that's the most up-to-date plan that I'll be going over today. Should be the last item. Thank you. So here we have an existing lot that was part of an OSRD subdivision for 45 Clapboard Street, approved, I believe, last year. We have existing grades sloping to the northwest. If you notice, we have in the rear of the lot an existing access and utility easement that has been there since the OSRD. There's some existing sewer, manholes, and infrastructure in the rear of the lot. In the front of the lot, a notable feature would be a guardrail crossing the entire frontage of the lot, separating existing grades from a foot drop to the south of the lot, and on the north of the lot, there's about a 3 to 4 foot difference in grade requiring the guardrail. We're proposing a single-family dwelling to be constructed here. The total disturbed area for this project would be about 17,700 square feet, and we would need approximately 500 to 600 cubic yards of fill. And why that fill is necessary is we aim to remove the guardrail, peeling it up towards the north. We have the guardrail end naturally, or existing. It ends at the south lot line, and we'd like it to end at the north lot line, opening up the lot for access for construction and living in this dwelling. We have implemented 250 feet of an erosion control. We have straw wattle with silt fence to prevent any stormwater runoff interfering with any of the other lots during construction. We have included 2 6-foot diameter by 6-foot depth catch infiltration basins that will mitigate the runoff for about 1 inch of stormwater that would be caught off the roof and the proposed driveway there. Do you have any questions? I can answer any questions now.
Great. And Abby, are there any comments from staff or consultants?
Hold on, let me just look here. We did have, Beta did provide in your packet some comments and did request some plan updates. And that's why the applicant did prepare this most recently revised plan. And I did check in with Holly at Beta for your review, and they had a question about if there was any sewer connection proposed. That's a question for the applicant.
Yes, we are proposing a sewer connection as well as a gas and water connection service. They're shown there on the plan.
They're shown on this plan. Okay. And then they did ask about the guardrail, so they would also request that the plan show the guardrail, that terminal where the guardrail terminates to be a crash worthy, or demonstrate that the guardrail terminates outside of that clear zone?
Yes, we've included the crash end of the guardrail. We included a detail on the plan, and we also we pulled the guardrail a little away from the right-of-way line, away from the curb, I should say, to comply with that comment or address it.
Okay, and also this project does require a land disturbance permit from to be filed with the conservation agent under the stormwater bylaw.
Correct.
I don't have any other comments at this time, Brian.
All right, thanks, Abby. So at this point, I'd like to open up to the board members for questions for the applicants. So starting again with David Atkins.
So where will most of the fill go? Like, I'm sorry if I'm not seeing it on one of these drawings already, but I was looking at the site, and I mean, it's a pretty significant drop off of the street down to where the house would be on this. Like, there's a pretty good drop just down to the stone wall and further. So I'm kind of want to understand where the how much of a disturbance, like what areas are going to have where the dirt's going to be, and how angled the driveway is going to be, because it's also it's treacherous along there. Like, as I walked along the side of the road there with the guardrail, it's you're going to have it's going to be a little tricky pulling out of that driveway, I'd say.
Yes, that's why that's why we're here for the earth material movement permit, because we are proposing to essentially lift that entire frontage up, so there will be no more treacherous slope. The grading shown there on the plan indicates that there will be almost no difference between the existing road current elevations and the lawn elevations. I mean, other than grading for drainage in the front, there will be that drop will be eliminated.
Okay, so as I'm looking at the site plan here with the there's a gradual slope down the street from like 205 to 200, and to those lines, you're filling in everything basically, like to bring it up to so that those contour lines are leveled. That's a lot of, and that's only 600 cubic yards.
Yes, and that does not include the fill that will be used from the excavation of the dwelling. So that we believe is conservative.
Okay, that's all the questions I have for now.
Okay, so Deborah Conant.
So, Abby, will they be providing a stormwater management plan to the Conservation Commission?
It's not a full stormwater plan that's required. That's not required with a single-family home application, but they do need to file a land disturbance permit. That's for if there's any disturbance over 5,000 square feet, but under an acre. So that's administrative review with the conservation agent.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay, and then Chris Path.
We have filed, just for the record, we also have filed with the Conservation Commission for the administrative land disturbance.
I have one question, and maybe just make it clearer in my mind. Not sure if it's the north side of the property, but the side closest to Clapboard Tree Street.
Mm-hmm.
If you're raising the fill up right there, but nothing is going to happen to the adjacent property, what is that transition going to be like? Will there won't be a need for a retaining wall or anything?
No. We plan to gradually meet the existing grade with about a 3-to-1 slope. So it's and as you can see on the plan, we also extend the guardrail in front of our frontage, so it'll cover that slope meeting existing grade.
Oh, I think I see that now. Okay, guardrail end proposed. All right, thank you.
And then, Bill, do you have any questions? Bill Delay? You may be on mute.
Yeah, Debbie got into what I wanted to get into, so no, I'm fine with the questions.
Right. And then I just had a question with regards to this change in elevation. What would this mean for potential sidewalks in the future along that? There's no sidewalk there currently, right?
No, there's not. There is a sidewalk, I believe, on the other side.
Maybe assist having a sidewalk, potentially be putting in there with that leveling, or is there still a drop?
There will be drop on the adjacent lots.
The adjacent, okay.
Yeah, because we will not be proposing any grading on any other lot than the subject property.
What is the setback distance from the street to the property?
For the dwelling or the
No,
zone?
I meant for the right-of-way. Do you know, Nora, off Winter Street?
Let me see if we can tell from the plan.
If a sidewalk were to be proposed by the town or whomever, I can't discern that distance.
I think, isn't that the line right at the fieldstone wall? Is that that might be where the distance from that stone wall to the street is a good, maybe more, at least 10 feet.
Yeah, looks like about 15.
Here, but
So about 15
From
from the
this-
side of the road
Mhm.
towards the house?
Yes.
And that would remain
and then
constant all the way to Clapboard Tree, right? Up to,
I don't know. I can't see all the
yeah,
the
we don't
lots.
have that. Okay.
and so they are going to rebuild that. They're going to put that fieldstone wall. They're basically fill in and then raise it, I guess, right? And then it will dip down as it. So I'm looking at the site plan, and you get down to 200 feet, and then it goes 199 down to like 192 at the lowest point. But I assume the stone wall would be repositioned on top of that, and then it would dip down to the next lot. Is that right?
If that's something the plan board would wish, yes, we can.
Any other board comments before we move to the public comments? And for the public comments, you can dial into 781-251-2581. And is the YouTube channel still down? Do we know?
The YouTube channel is now up and running?
About 10 seconds ago.
About 10 seconds ago. So anyone who is watching on YouTube would not have seen the entirety of the discussion, but they can call in with questions now. And that number is 781-251-2581.
Why don't we give it? I know there could be a little bit of a delay, so give it a little time. And while we wait, does the chair does the applicant have any statement for the board based on any of the comments?
Do I have anything to add based on what the board has commented? Is that the
Yeah.
question? No.
Yeah, if you have any final remarks, any responses that you feel that you'd like to provide to the board.
Hi,
Please
David,
hold for just a moment.
pretty much covered everything that I wanted to go over. He knows it in more detail than I do, but all the suggestions that have been brought up and the points that were made, we, plan to follow. So as of now, if there's any other specific questions, I think David has covered it all.
Mr. Chairman, you have a call
Nor
from the
has
public.
Okay.
Please state your name.
Hi, Marguerite Ramo, 48 Clapboard Tree Street. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
We can.
Terrific, thank you. I wanted to know whether or not we know what route I have several questions. I can give them all at once or break them up.
Hold on just one second.
Preference?
Marjorie, just a second. Board members on the phone, can you hear the question?
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead, Marjorie.
I have several thank you. I have several questions. The first was if we know the route that the trucks will take, and whether or not we'll have any police details present. I'm directly across from the lodge. There's a lot of activity out there. I'm assuming trucks will be utilizing Clapboard Tree Street at that end, which would be the Pond Street end. And I was also wondering for the cubic tons, I think it was, of fill that are bringing in, that are being brought in. How many trucks is that approximately?
So how many trucks? Yes, I believe it was suggested that we have police detail when we bring those trucks in, and we will adhere to those suggestions. We filed for this permit because, as David mentioned, primarily because of the guardrail and wanting to, bring everything up to grade to kind of mitigate that, as you guys mentioned, the slopes. But we do estimate about 400 cubic yards of fill that will be coming out, when we dig the foundation. And we believe it'll be about 600 cubic yards of fill that we'll need. So, we're kind of right at that trigger point for this permit. How many trucks is that? Do you guys know that? What is that? About 40 to 50 trucks we're thinking is 600, right? So if we have, say roughly 400 from the excavation, we're thinking, we might only need to bring in about 200 cubic yards, which would be, 20. About half that, about 20 trucks.
Was there another question?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Thanks for the answer. There was a delay on the line, and it's very hard to pick up what's being said over the telephone, but so the TV was on at the same time, and there's a delay. Sorry about that. So will Clapboard Tree at Pond be utilized for this?
The question is, will the trucks come by way of Clapboard Tree and Pond Street?
Yeah, so the planning board had specific recommendations. They wanted us to avoid certain portions of Clapboard Tree. I can pull that up to address that. It was sent directly to my email, so I'll just grab that.
Just for the planning board's information, the reason I'm asking this is at the area of Clapboard Tree and Pond, at that end, because of all the construction going on just past the synagogue, at the group home, and then also at the 45 Clapboard Tree site. There's a tremendous amount of activity on the roadway with a tremendous amount of construction vehicles, meaning personal vehicles of people who are on site doing work, parked along Clapboard Tree at that end, and there's also a lot of large trucks coming in from that end already, and there's been times where there's been no police detail on that part of Clapboard Tree, and consequently there's been a big, there's been a danger traffic-wise there. And so the reason I wanted to know the number of trucks is that I was wondering whether or not they'll be staggered so that, or if we'll have any detail at the clapboard tree end, or if the detail would only be at the Winter Street end, assuming we will have a police detail. Just in order for the safety purposes of the whole situation, and also whether or not there would be any coordination available. I don't know that it wouldn't be too difficult, but coordination, given we're going to be having, we've had 2 active sites there already. Now we're going to have a third, and with a good possibility that we'll have 2 to 3 more after that. So those were my thoughts. And I'm on.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi. So the planning board, just to kind of clarify, they have already, kind of laid out where they want the trucks to be. So they've asked us to not bring any earth material to or from our project at 35 Winter Street on any portion of Clapboard Tree Street east of Winter Street. Nor on any portion of Pond Street northeast of Clapboard Tree Street. I don't know if that addresses that, but just to be clear, this project is going to be operating, it doesn't have anything to do with the current development that is, going in. They are the seller of this property, but this will be on its own. And I don't believe that we should be operating trucks for more than about 2 days. So, we're in close contact with the seller and the developer of the other project. If that's something that we can help mitigate, we, can look into that. But it's not going to be a large burden, we don't believe.
Okay, I'm going to disconnect in case anybody else wants to call in. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
We can give a couple seconds for the line, for anybody who wants to dial into that line.
So can we just clarify in the conditions I see here, I don't see that those exclusions, but can we just describe the path would basically be the trucks come off of High Street, I assume, down Pond, right on Clapboard Tree, and up Winter. Is that the path that we would be requiring?
Yes. So basically, they've asked us, and we're happy to oblige, that that we'd access the property from High Street or Route 109 by following a route which turns onto eastbound Pond Street, turns right onto Clapboard Tree, and then turns right onto Winter Street and turns right onto the property.
Okay, we usually have a condition that maps that out. So
I do see that as condition number 1, Dave. I believe. Is that right, Abby?
Yes, I'm showing that on the screen now. Proposed condition number 1. All trucks carrying earth material to and from 35 Winter Street shall be required to access the property from High Street, Route 109, by following a route which turns onto eastbound Pond Street near the Sheehan Elementary School, then turns right onto Clapboard Tree Street, then turns right onto Winter Street, and then turns right onto the property. Those same trucks shall be required to egress the property by following a route which turns left from the property onto Winter Street, then turns left onto Clapboard Tree Street, then turns left onto Pond Street, and then turns either right or left onto High Street, Route 109. No truck carrying earth material movement to or from 35 Winter Street shall travel on any portion of Clapboard Tree Street east of Winter Street, nor on any portion of Pond Street northeast of Clapboard Tree Street. Then there's condition 2, which discusses times, proposed condition 2. These are the conditions recommended by Abby, your town planner. The second condition that's recommended regards timing of those trucks. On Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, when school is in session, earth material trucks shall not enter or exit the property between the hours of 8:15 a.m. and 9:15 a.m., nor between the hours of 2:45 p.m. and 3:45 p.m. On Wednesdays, when school is in session, earth material trucks shall not enter or exit the property between the hours of 8:15 a.m. and 9:15 a.m., nor between the hours of 11:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m., nor between the hours of 2:45 p.m. and 3:45 p.m. That condition is to avoid all the times when school buses or children walking to and from school would be in the area. And then there's one more condition that's responsive to the questions that were asked. This is proposed condition 3. A police detail shall be employed by the applicants, should be employed at the applicant's expense to direct traffic during all times when earth material trucks are entering or exiting the property, and during all times when construction vehicles or equipment are operating or parked within the public right-of-way.
Thanks, Nora. I was looking at I printed this out earlier this afternoon, and I think it was updated a lot. So that's what I was looking for.
And are there any other public comments through the phone or in the room?
There are not.
Okay, great. So Abby, do you want to walk us through the rest of the conditions?
Sure. And then picking up where Nora left off, these were my proposed conditions. The fourth one is to protect the pavement on Winter Street. So that should be protected during the construction. Condition number 5 is the crushed stone entrance shall be replaced when the stone becomes clogged to keep the dirt on site prior to trucking it onto the road. Condition number 6 is related to the general bylaws and the construction hours. Condition number 7 requires the applicant to be responsible for filing any other permits or applications that may be required by any other boards, commissions, or agencies. Condition number 8, that's the applicant shall be responsible for repairing any damage that may be caused during construction to anything in the right-of-way, with first seeking town Department of Public Works approval. And then the last suggested condition is number 9, that a copy of the decision and the approved project plans shall be kept on site at all times.
Yeah, thank you for that, Abby. So we've had any of the questions from the public, and then the applicant. It's not you responded to each of the statements from the public, but I don't know if you had any closing remarks beyond what you've already said.
No, not beyond what we've already mentioned. Thank you.
Right.
Brian, Mr. Chairman, I just had one follow-up question that just occurred to me. I just wanted to clarify the order of operations. You're proposing to remove the guardrail and then raise the grade? Or are we going to raise the grade, then remove the guardrail?
It make more sense to raise the grade and then remove the guardrail.
That's what I was thinking,
We would
for
have
safety.
to remove a small portion of the guardrail just to access the site
Yeah.
to fill it. That would be the only.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. We didn't have a cliff hanging out there for a few days. Sorry to interrupt. That was it.
And then no worries. And so are there any further discussion on the matter from the board members? And since we were able to get Facebook up and running for this particular matter, I think this might be different from the other two where we continued to April 7th. How does the board feel about that? Like Dave Atkins, why don't I go with you first?
Yeah,
Okay
I feel like the fact that we had people respond right away over the phone, I feel like that this is good to go.
Okay. And then Deborah
I agree.
and Chris
I agree.
and Bill, are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And so it looks like we've gone through each of the conditions. So if somebody would,
I make-
they want to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the earth material movement application for 35 Winter Street with the conditions of approval that we have discussed.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
And any further discussion? Okay, so by roll call, and that second, I heard Bill DeLay second it. Just
All right,
there was
thank
a few
you.
voices, but I heard Bill DeLay.
Okay.
And then, so from a roll call, in the same order, Dave Atkins,
Aye.
Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Chris Paff,
Aye.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well, so that is 5-0, so that motion passes.
To close this.
And then do we need to, is this a hearing that we would need to close?
It is, yes.
Make a motion to close this hearing.
Make a motion to close the hearing.
I make a motion to close the hearing.
And do we have a second?
Second.
And any discussion related to that? Hearing none, so we have a motion and a second. So Dave Atkins,
Aye.
Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Chris Paff,
Aye.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well, so the hearing is closed. 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. So continuing on, we might have a few drop-offs, but not as many. The next item is item number 5, which is the zoning amendment continued public hearing. So this is our public hearing where we discuss the articles, and we should consider voting on these to move forward. And Abby, one of the items could be closing the planning board hearing.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation. You opened your public hearing on February 25th, then you continued it to be with the FinCom. That was on March 2nd. And just because we don't know what the future may hold in the next couple of weeks, I would recommend you discuss tonight, ask for any public comment, ask people to call in, and then vote to close your hearing to make a recommendation to town meeting.
Sure. And then I think I might as well give the phone number out again, just finding it here. So the phone number to call in when we get to the public hearing portion is 781-251-2581. So if anybody has any comments related to any of these articles, and then Abby, should we also talk about as far as the town meeting and and do we need to get into the planning of town meeting and what that may or may not look like, or is that something that hasn't been discussed yet?
I think it's really just kind of up in the air right now. The process is that the Finance and Warrant Commission, they were expected to meet next week on Monday night, the 23rd, and then continue to the 24th if needed. So typically that's where, if there's any outstanding questions, that's where various boards and committees and warrant article sponsors go back before the Warrant Commission, the FinCom, the Finance and Warrant Commission, and then they vote to make their recommendation to town meeting. I expect they're still working to do that. However, and then the town meeting was originally scheduled for, is scheduled for May 4th. However, just with the current situation, everything's very fluid, and we're all looking at what we can do at this time, especially with the limit restrictions and capacity limitations on having people present at one time. So we are really looking into virtual and remote participation and seeing what we can do.
Okay, great. So without further ado, why don't we get into each of these? So the first article is it's the Select Board zoning amendment related to medical uses. So this as of these other ones were discussed at the Finance Commission. There were a number of questions and comments from FinCom as well as the public related to these. So I figure I'd open it up to the board if there's any questions or comments that they may have that they would like to share with other members. This wasn't presented by the board. It's not. It will not be co-sponsored by the board. But tonight we would want to make a recommendation in favor of or not for this article.
Are you going to get on the line and ask each person to make a comment? Or?
Yeah. So if everybody wanted to go through, one of the same thing. So Dave Atkins, do you have any comments related to this one?
So I support this. I have no additional comments.
And then Deborah Conant.
I'm not a proponent of intermixing the FMUODs and the UAMUDs with the underlying district in the chart, in the use chart, so I'm not a proponent of that.
And then Christopher Path.
Because I missed 2 hearings, I am not allowed to vote, but I am in favor of this as a resident.
Okay, and Bill DeLay.
From the beginning, I thought this should go on to the fall meeting, and we should discuss it a lot further. So, I'm not a proponent of it.
And then as far as me, when at the FinCom meeting, one item that a resident got up to speak where she was looking at the definitions and the fact that one of the definitions, and it seemed to be an area of linguistics that she was interested in. But if you looked at the language, it looked like it could be argued either way, a positive or a negative, depending upon what somebody wanted it to be. I forget which definition it was. But as a result of that, I do think that the definitions which weren't changed, I think, need to be at least revisited. So I found that interesting when I looked at the definitions. That I think the definitions need to be looked at, and also maybe not decoupled from the university FMUOD. So at this point, Abby, do we open up the line for public comment? What is the process for this meeting, for this hearing?
Yeah. Yep. You can ask for public comment if anyone's there. I'm not sure if anyone's there, and then also I would state the phone number again.
Yeah. So let me. 781-251-2581. So it's 781-251-2581. So if there's anybody that calls in with any comments or questions.
There are no callers.
Enough time considering? No callers. Okay. So at this point, also, just to make sure that we're following the correct process, so do we just go straight to whether we recommend in favor or not? Is that the process? That's a question for you, Abby.
Yeah. Yes. So you should make a recommendation to town meeting. In February, you made a recommendation to the Finance and Warrant Commission. You should make a recommendation to either support or not support the article for town meeting. And
so if somebody would like to entertain that motion.
I make a motion that we not recommend this article to town meeting as written.
And do we have a second? And actually, do we need to, the motion in the packet is a little bit different, Deborah? I'm wondering if because it talks about but there's a motion on the floor, so is there a second?
Does it need to be reworded? That says to move it to recommend favorable, and this is to not recommend a favorable action.
I see. Yeah, and you made a motion on the floor, so if there's a second for that motion. It would have to come from myself, Bill, or from Dave.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. So is there any further discussion on this? And then a roll call vote. So we can start off with you, Dave.
Nay.
And Deborah Conant.
Yay.
Bill DeLay.
Nay.
And I'm so Deb, you made a motion to
Not to recommend it.
not to recommend it. And so I am a yay as well.
So I think, and so just to clarify, so I know, a no is like I support it, so I voted nay, and Deb doesn't recommend this, so she voted aye, so that's the right way.
Yeah, so I'm an aye as well. And Bill, what did you vote?
I'm an aye also, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we have
Yay.
three ayes and one nay. So moving on to the next one, residential accessory use for renting of rooms. So this is the article where we discussed the cutoff was. Let me get to my language here. I don't have it in front of me. So the cutoff was, when we met with FinCom, one of the issues that came up was the cutoff of 5. So
Yeah, fewer than 5.
Fewer than 5. So I'm wondering, is it possible that we could reconsider and changing it to, it has to be 2 or more? So in other words, right now it was prohibiting rentals of 1 night through 5 nights. And what FinCom was saying is that that's too restrictive. So is it possible at this time that we would be able to visit the duration itself and change the duration? So this would be a question to Abby.
Yes. So I think that would be changing your short-term rental definition.
Yeah.
Right? So right now it says short-term. So right now it says short-term for over 5 consecutive days and up to 29 days. So it sounds like you would want to change. You're proposing changing that for over 2 days, from the 5 to the 2.
Yeah, it seemed like from
29?
what. Yeah, so from what I heard from FinCom, it sounds like it was overly restrictive, and the more I thought about it, I was thinking that the planning board may consider changing that, and I was even thinking to changing it to 2 or more, so greater than 1. So that way you wouldn't have you couldn't have a 1 night Airbnb in a residential, but you could have a 2 or more for the definition of short term. So that's the way that I left FinCom. So I don't know if anybody else how would be interested in changing that, and how we would even go about entertaining that.
Yep, I believe, I'll just double check with Nora here, but I believe the planning board could make this new recommendation and forward on the new recommendation to town meeting with the revised language.
You can do that. I would recommend you also return to the FinCom. The FinCom will be reviewing the article you submitted, so if you're changing the language of the article, you need to submit the new language to the FinCom as well. So in this case, if you have a motion, it should cover both a recommendation to the Finance and Warrant Commission that's different than your last one, and a recommendation to town meeting.
Okay. So, Brad, are you recommending no single overnight stays? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so essentially, the way it currently states, it would be, the current Article 2 FinCom is 6 to 29 days is your definition for short term. So it prohibits renting 1 night, 2 night, 3 night, 4 night, 5 night. And from what I heard, it's just too prohibitive, such that it would, I think to remove the 1 night rental would be good. I think in the future the board it'd be nice if the board looked into regulation on registration and things like that. But right now it's just duration. But I think the current thing, 6 to 29 days, is too restrictive. I think it should be, instead of 6 to 29, I think it should be 2 to 29. And that's what I heard. So why don't I, to move this process along, so I'll go through each board member. So Dave Atkins, what's your comment to this residential accessory use?
Well, I think that's a responsive, that's a good idea. It partially addresses my concerns, but I'm still not in favor of it.
Okay, great. And then Deborah Conant.
So I think it's a starting point. I think that we still have a lot of work to do on this particular issue, but it's a good starting point.
And then Chris Paff.
I'm not allowed to weigh in on any of the articles.
Right. Sorry about that. Bill DeLay.
Yeah, it's kind of a starting point. I don't think it's tough enough. To be renting rooms in a residential neighborhood, or a business, and people buy a house and have bought a house, to do that, to put a business in a neighborhood, it just kills me that you can do that. So, I mean, 5 to 29 is good with me, but if you want to bring it down to 2 to 29, but there's a lot of work to do here. I can't believe that when you have somebody comes and tells the board how much it interrupts their lives, and they've lived in a neighborhood, and to allow this in a neighborhood is just unbelievable to me. But anyway, yes, 5 to 29, but if you want to bring it to 2 to 29, but there's a lot of work to do here. A neighborhood's a neighborhood, and go, look at it. I was watching something on TV, and a very famous person, there was something very similar to this. They could not believe this was allowed in the neighborhood, but here we are, Westwood, and we allowed it in the neighborhood, and we have people on the planning board who really think that it's okay. I just can't believe it. But anyway, okay.
So what do you think about changing that lower limit? Do you think 2's?
Well, it's a starting point, but I think it's really too liberal. But yeah, if you want to do it, then at least we're starting someplace. But to be able to rent a room by the hour and have someone come in and buy a house in a neighborhood for a business, and that's what's happened, for a business in a neighborhood. Now, understand what a neighborhood is, because I think some of the people in the planning board don't quite understand that. It's for people to live and raise a family, and they live there for a long, long time. And when you can rent a room by the hour, it's just unbelievable. But so yes, 2 days is a start.
And so Nora, if a motion was to be made, you would make it in one motion. So would it be moving to recommend changing the lower limit of the short term to 2 nights?
So I think if I were you, I would
Favorable
do,
action?
I would do 3 separate motions. First, I would make a motion to amend the proposed bylaw, the article, and then if you have support to amend that, then I would recommend a second motion that recommends in favor of the Finance and Warrant Commission's consideration of that article, and then a third motion that would recommend that town meeting vote in favor of the article. I would do it in 3 steps, beginning with a formal amendment of your proposed article.
So I don't have the full item in front of me, but could it be simply to amend the article for short term from 6 to 29 days to 2 to 29 days?
So I have the article on the screen, if you can see it, if you're watching on cable or on the live streaming on YouTube. The article is up there right now, and what you would be changing is the definition of short-term rental. So the current definition of short-term rental is renting of rooms by resident owner or the furnishing of table board in a dwelling by the resident owner to a single family or to not more than 3 persons other than members of the family for over 5 consecutive days up to 29 consecutive days. I think what you are suggesting is to replace the word 5 and the number 5 with the word 2 and the number 2.
Or would it be 1 because it's greater than 5?
Yeah, it says over 5.
Yeah, so it could be over 1. Instead of over 1, if you'd like to say for at least 2 consecutive days up to 29 consecutive days, you could say that as well.
Okay. So I make a motion to amend the definition of short-term rental in the warrant article to state at least 2 up to 29 days. And that's a motion. Is there a second?
Sorry, I was muted. Second?
And any further discussion? So by roll call, so Dave Atkins,
Nay.
Deborah Conant, Deborah Conant, you might be on mute.
Sorry about that. Aye.
And then Bill Delay,
Aye.
and then I myself, so that's 3-1. And then the next, so Nora, you had said to, I move to recommend favorable action and approval of this article from the Finance and Warrant Commission.
Yep.
And do we have a second?
Second.
So roll call, David Atkins. I'm sorry.
Nay.
Any further discussion on this motion? No discussion. So David Atkins,
Nay.
Deb Conant,
Aye.
Bill Delay,
Aye.
and I for me as well. And I move to recommend favorable action and approval of this article to town meeting as written.
Or, sorry, you mean as revised?
As revised. So I move to recommend favorable action and approval of this article to town meeting as revised. So do we have a second?
Second.
And any discussion? Hearing nothing. So David Atkins,
Nay.
Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Bill Delay,
Aye.
and I for me as well. So that's it for that article. But is there any, what we didn't have is there any public comment from the line?
There is none.
So noting that there is no comment from public. So the next article is prohibitive uses. So this was the article for which we received comment from the building inspector, stating that I believe it was it wouldn't change, stating that it's redundant in his practice. So opening this up to the board as far as any moving forward with this language for prohibitive use. How do we feel about this statement, this additional sentence in the bylaws? I guess we could start with David Atkins.
Oh, I don't think it's necessary, so I would vote against it.
Okay. And Deborah Conant, the prohibitive use language. Do you have any comments for that?
Yeah, so the building commissioner said it wouldn't hurt it to have it in there. It wouldn't, he felt that it was redundant, but I can't imagine that anyone wouldn't want to see any additional layer of protection if it could be used in such a way. So I think it's actually something that we should move forward with.
And Bill DeLay. So Chris, Deborah, was that all that you had to say to that?
Yes.
Okay. And Bill DeLay?
Yeah, I think it's just another layer. I think I'd be in favor of it. Yep.
And I don't have anything addition to that. It does seem like from a legalese standpoint, I've heard a couple different comments on it, but it seems that the sentence that is being suggested to be added is considered prohibitory, whereas the other statement, it sounds like if a certain business wanted to come in and they could argue the statements, versus the newer sentence is a little bit more prohibitory. So I open this one up to the 20 public comment for prohibitive uses. Is there anybody in the room or on the line?
There is not.
Okay. So does somebody want to make a recommendation for this item?
I make a motion to recommend favorable action and approval of this article at the town meeting as written.
Okay. And do we have a second?
Second.
And any further discussion? Hearing none. So by roll call, Dave Atkins.
Nay.
Deborah Conant.
Aye.
Bill DeLay.
Aye.
And I'm aye as well, so it's 3 ayes, 1 no. So the last one is firearm sales. So this is the article for which it's currently allowed in 4 zones. We're looking to, the current article is recommending removing it from local business A and local business B. So I'll go across the board to see if there's any further comments on this. So Dave Atkins.
No further comment.
And Deborah Conant.
No comments.
Bill DeLay.
No comment.
And I don't have anything additional either. So if somebody wants to make a motion.
I move that we recommend favorable action and approval of this article to town meeting as written.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And any further comment from the planning board? And then, as far as, was there any comments from the public for this one?
No comments.
Okay, so by roll call vote, Dave Atkins.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Oh, we didn't vote yet on the firearm sales. So it's the.
Oh, I thought we did.
No.
Yeah, we just did the motion, the second, and then I wanted to
Oh,
get the
sorry.
public, I wanted to
Okay.
get the public
Yeah.
comment in.
Yeah. So
do
aye.
you, okay, and then Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and aye for me, so that is unanimous. And then a motion to close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
And do we have a second?
Second.
And then do we have any further discussion?
Who seconded that? I heard two voices.
I heard Bill DeLay.
Okay.
And Bill, did you second that? It sounded like it was you.
Yes.
Okay. And so any further discussion on this? And hearing none. So through roll call. So Dave Atkins,
Aye.
Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and aye for me. So that's 4-0. So that closes the public hearing for that. And so next item on the list is agenda item 6, open space and recreation plan. This is a continued public hearing. So is the recommendation to continue this to another date? What is the...
Yes. My recommendation is to continue out to the Tuesday, May 12th meeting at 7 p.m. at 50 Carby Street. We've had this hearing open for a while. We got responses back from the state. We're still working to get all those responses completed and back to you for the final public hearing.
This is Nora. If I could just add to that, the comments are ready for review. However, this is a plan that the board has already approved, and there are changes that will be made. They're minor in nature, but I believe that you want as full a public hearing as possible on this, and there is no time-sensitive nature. So I would actually recommend that you put this even further out to a meeting in June, just because of the fluidity of the circumstances now. I think giving more time to ensure greater and complete public participation for items like this and eventually your consideration of the comprehensive plan, because you are not under a time deadline, I recommend putting it off even further.
Yeah, so,
Right.
so we haven't picked dates in June at this point. So, so what is? Do we just pick a? So how can we be flexible with this?
So you could either pick a date in June that you're all comfortable with setting as a meeting, or you could put it on your May 12th meeting with the understanding that you may have to further continue it if we're not in a position to have a fully open public hearing that has an easier way for people to participate.
Yeah, so why don't we, instead of picking a date in June, do you want to just put it in on that May 12th?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
All right. So does somebody want to make that motion?
I make a motion to put the open space and recreation plan on May 12th.
And do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And any discussion? It's here now. So for roll call vote, so Dave Atkins,
Aye.
Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Chris Paff,
Aye.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. So that hearing is continued to May 12th. So then the next item on the agenda is the A&R plan for 470, 480, 440 East Street. It's the proposed Morrison Park and Recreation Plan to create parcels for town meeting, Article 97 protection. So, Abby, how do we deal with this since we're remote? Can we endorse it over the phone?
I think typically your motion is to vote to endorse a plan. So I'd recommend that would still be your motion. And then we would have to get the plans to you to actually put the signatures on the Mylar plan.
And then are there any comments from from staff for this one? Obviously, this is the Article 97, so it's just starting to lay it out.
Yeah, this is the plan is in your packet. This is the plan that goes along with the Article 97, which includes the creation of, if you're looking at the map, Parcel A, that would be the large lot in the middle that includes the fields and the basketball court, baseball and softball fields. That would be the park and recreation land under the Article 97. And then the lot, this carves out a Lot 3. That's where the Public Works shed and the snack shack and parking area is. And then the little Parcel B in the back, that's the wireless communication facility.
Abby, I had a question.
Okay, great. So why don't we go through each member? So Dave, do you have any questions or comments for this?
How does this satisfy the vital access requirements and all? I mean, there's no frontage for Parcel A.
Oh, yes, that's right. So Parcel A, it's a change in a lot line, and it's labeled as not a buildable lot.
Okay, so it creates, arguably, that actually adds another layer of protection. All right, that's all I've got, I guess.
And then, Deborah, do you have any comments?
So if we endorse this A&R plan, and then Article 97 doesn't pass, then those lots are now A&R. Is that correct? A&R lots?
Yes. I'll defer to Nora here. However, I mean, it wouldn't take effect until it's recorded at the Registry of Deeds. That's the stuff that actually would create the lots.
So why wouldn't we do that after the fact in case it doesn't pass? Because I feel like it's those unintended consequences. I don't want to see us signing an A&R for that and then having someone be able to come in and do whatever they want and not have to go through the planning board because we've signed that over as an A&R.
So this is Nora.
There's a lot of things about
The creation of the A&R simply takes a property and makes it 3 different properties, but it doesn't change the process by which the town voters would have to be involved if anything was done with this property other than it's being owned by the town and used the way it's being used now. So what this does is it creates 3 separate lots because that is needed for the Article 97 to go through. The Article 97 has to refer to specific parcels. And the only way to do that is to actually create the parcels by deed and by A&R. So that's the purpose of this plan. It separates 1 lot into 3 lots, but it does not change the use of the lots, it does not change the ownership of the lots, and it doesn't change the process by which the town could change the ownership or the use of the lots. It would still require a 2/3 vote by town meeting to do anything with these parcels.
But they would still remain in A&R if it got the 2/3 vote, correct?
They would remain 3 parcels instead of 1 if the board endorses it. A&R is simply the reference to the way that you create the lots. There's nothing about them that make them A&R lots. It's just they would be 3 lots instead of 1 lot. All 3 lots would be owned by the town. All 3 lots would be zoned as they are currently zoned. And all 3 lots, if the town wished to do something different with them, to sell them to another party, they would all require 2/3 vote of town meeting. The action would be exactly the same whether it's 1 lot or 3 lots. The only reason the A&R plan is being proposed to divide 1 lot into 3 lots is so that the Article 97 deed restrictions can be placed on the Morrison Park lot.
So, Nora, if this were if a private developer came to us with this, we would say, why on earth are you doing that? Because you're creating two unbuildable lots. However, since they are being designated, since they're saying that we're acknowledging these are unbuildable lots, they're landlocked, then the requirements of vital access don't apply. So we're still in the case of we don't, approval is not required because what's being proposed is not a subdivision. And so this is like an unbuildable
Correct.
that's being proposed.
Correct. So unless a planning board looks at a proposed A&R plan and determines that it is not an A&R plan, but in fact a subdivision, the board has no grounds not to endorse the plan, or they have no grounds to refuse to endorse it. They can choose to do that, in which case it becomes an effective plan without their endorsement after 21 days pass. So the planning board has a choice to endorse the plan, to allow it to go forward so the Article 97 deed can be written, or if the planning board for some reason has a concern about doing that, they can allow 21 days to pass without endorsement, and the plan will be recorded and the lots will be created either way. The only way for the planning board to prevent this division of land would be to find that the lot configuration proposed is actually a subdivision and not an approval not required plan. And I don't see any grounds under which you would do that.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Yeah, and so Chris Path?
Actually, my question was exactly what Deb's was, so I appreciate all the discussion on that. So, no more questions from me.
And Bill DeLay? Oh, you might be on mute, Bill.
Oh, yep, no questions.
Yeah, so my comment for this is like after the last FinCom meeting, I don't know how Article 97 stands going to town meeting. It seemed like it was getting some pushback from some of FinCom. So is this A&R like it seems like it might be a little bit premature, but you're saying that it goes into effect anyway after 21 days?
Unless you determine that this is not an A&R plan that's before you. So you have an applicant, in this case the town, who's proposed a plan that divides one lot into 3 lots. And if you find that that is not a permitted use of the approval not required process, and you determine that this would actually be a subdivision, would require a full subdivision hearing, that's the only grounds under which a planning board can reject an A&R plan. Otherwise, so your choices are to reject it because it's a subdivision, to endorse it because it is an A&R plan, or to fail to endorse it, in which case it becomes an effective plan and can be recorded after 21 days.
So how would we determine if it's a subdivision? What information has been provided to determine that?
Well, that would be up to the board to review its subdivision regulations.
Well, that's what I mean. So tonight, like, how do I even, how would I do that tonight?
Well, as planning board members, I would expect you to be familiar with the subdivision regulations and with the regulations that present a plan as approval not required. An approval not required plan.
Usually the applicant comes in and actually explains why it's not. Like they can answer the questions.
Actually, it's the opposite with an A&R plan. There's no approval required, so the applicant doesn't have to make any presentation at all. They simply put a plan before the board, and the board takes a look at that, and it's the board that has to make an affirmative decision that the plan shows a subdivision as opposed to an approval not required plan. So the presumption of an A&R plan is that it does not require your approval, And then you, as a board, can either refute that assumption and prove that it is in fact a subdivision, not an approval not required plan, or you can say, we just simply ignore it and allow it to go through the process. Those are the options that are before you. An applicant doesn't have to appear before the board.
And Deb, did you do any research on this as far as a subdivision?
I have not done it on a subdivision, but I've done a lot of research on Article 97, and I just feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. And I don't understand why we would sign this over until we know for sure whether we're going to get the endorsement of FinCom on Article 97.
Yeah, I got the sense. And the other thing, too, is that the who knows what the spring town meeting's even going to look like. It might be an abbreviated town meeting. So this article may not even be there. It does seem premature.
I agree.
So I think if somebody wants to, so if somebody wants to make a motion.
I mean, can't this be continued? Because, as I said, we haven't gotten. I mean, even Article 97. We heard from selectmen that they have the ability to lease it without having to go before town meeting. And that wasn't something that was explained to us in the very first meeting when they brought the Article 97 to us. And there's a lot of other questions that I actually have. So I don't see why we can't continue this particular application to another hearing.
And do we need public? Is this a public hearing item that we need to ask questions from the public, or no?
No, an A&R plan has no approval required, therefore no hearing. That's A&R means approval not required.
I just wanted to make sure I checked the boxes so that nothing. So does somebody want to make a motion?
So what is the form of? It sounds like we want to. It sounds like we were more comfortable with not.
It's a vote to endorse the A&R plan.
All right. So I will make a motion. I will make a motion that we endorse the A&R plan.
Okay. And do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion from the board? Seeing none. So. Roll call. So Dave Atkins.
Aye.
Deborah Conant.
Aye.
Chris Path.
Aye.
Bill DeLay.
Nay.
And I'm aye for this one. So it's 3-2. And no,
Okay.
we don't need
So that was 3 to
three
to
in
endorse.
favor.
Okay.
3 to endorse.
Okay.
So a majority to endorse.
All right. Thank you.
So then, do we need to? It's not a hearing, so we don't need to close it. So why don't we get to other business? It's getting a little bit late here. So the minutes, I've reviewed the December 12th. I've not reviewed January 7th or the other ones. So is there any board discussion on the December 12th? I'm sorry, the December 10th minutes?
Let's see. Hold on 1 second.
And Abby did, she did add additional text to clarify statements from the board members. So thank you for doing that, Abby.
Yep. I have no comments.
Okay. So I make a motion to approve the December 10th meeting minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, not all those in favor. Dave Atkins.
Aye.
Deborah Conant.
Aye.
Chris Path.
Aye.
Bill DeLay.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. And I haven't been able to review the January items, so would everybody? I'm just going to move that to our next meeting. Is everybody okay with that?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, I didn't review January or March.
So I make a motion. Do we need to? We don't need to motion on that, do we? No.
Right, no, you don't need to.
Okay. So the next item for other business is the review of the open meeting law complaint letter that has been drafted by Attorney Goldberg. So the agenda item tonight is to review the draft letter regarding the open meeting law complaints, and finalize the draft letter and possibly vote to approve and send the planning board a response letter to the Attorney General. So I'll start off. So thank you for the letter for review. And my first comment is consistent with my statement at the meeting on March 4th, 2020. I would recommend the deletion of the words "no further motions were made" from the second paragraph on page 2 of the draft letter. So I want to recommend deleting the words "no further motions were made." So I would entertain a motion to that effect.
Brian, can I just ask, there were some other people on the line earlier. Are they still, can we check? Lauren, attorney, the special legal counsel,
Yeah,
Attorney Goldberg.
I heard Attorney Goldberg call in. So
Yes,
she's
I am here.
right. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I think we still have everybody else on the line as well. So I'd like to see that deletion. So if somebody wanted to entertain a motion to that effect.
Make the motion.
So I make a motion to, Deb, if you wanted to, it sounded like you were starting.
No, go ahead.
So I make a motion to delete the words "no further motions were made" from the second paragraph on page 2 of the draft letter. So is there a second? So there's a second, and the second was by Deb. And so any further discussion on this item? Hearing
I'm
no
not clear I'm not clear what the purpose of that is. I mean, there were obviously other motions during the meeting, but is it kind of
Not on that point. There were no other motions made on that point.
Please identify yourself.
Deborah Conant has
Yeah, my
left the
name's
conference.
I'm sorry. I'm Attorney Tom O'Loughlin. There were no other motions made on that point, and we raised that, and that's where the discussion was had with Attorney Goldberg. There was no other motions made. Irrelevant. It's trying to prove a negative.
I don't really know what it's trying to prove. I mean, you have failed to respond to the complaint at all. And actually, I don't know why you're talking, since this is supposed to be for the planning board to discuss, to figure out how to solve the problem, not to engage in litigation.
Dave, this meeting is to discuss the letter and to finalize the language of the letter. So when I read the letter at the previous meeting, I had made a comment the comments were made about not
Deborah
adding
Conant
this
has
type of
joined the
language in.
conference.
Sorry about that.
So I would like to see those words. No further motions were made. To me, it's irrelevant to add those words in.
Okay, that's
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, who's speaking?
It's Lauren Goldberg.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Are you suggesting that entire, because it says the discussion starts with like, as reflected in the minutes, no blah, 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 then no further motions were made. So are you suggesting that whole sentence be deleted?
No, just the comma, no further motions were made.
So then that leaves like a hanging sentence. That's the only reason. I mean, that's up to you guys because I prepared it for your signature, but it just, as reflected in the March 4, 2020 Planning Board video, following the discussion and direction to special counsel to prepare a response. It just doesn't seem like a sentence. it could just say, following the discussion, special counsel was directed to prepare a response, period.
That seems fine to me. Attorney O'Laughlin, what does that sound to you?
Bear with me 1 second. No, because I believe that there's going to be additional motions made that are going to reconstruct that whole sentence, that whole paragraph. The fact that there were no other motions made is relevant. It's trying to prove a negative. They didn't have to make any motions. There's a motion on the floor. You have a second. Put it to discussion and a vote.
Yeah, and Attorney O'Laughlin, do you have the draft letter in front of you?
Bear with me.
So if it was removed, it would say, as reflected, and this is the last paragraph, it would say, as reflected in the March 4th, 2020 Planning Board video, following the discussion and direction of the special counsel to prepare a response. So,
to prepare a response, period. That's what you asked her to do. There was a lengthy discussion on whether or not you should put in, there was a motion made, motions weren't made. It's irrelevant. It's trying to prove a negative. You put a period.
Chairman,
I'm not done. Excuse me, I'm not done.
Yeah, he's still talking.
Don't interrupt me. I'm not done. You can put a period at the end of the word response, and you've done exactly what you asked counsel, Ms. Goldberg, to do for you. Period.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
with all due respect, I'm not arguing about that at all. I'm just saying that if we just delete the words, no further motions were made, that is not a proper sentence. And all I was suggesting is that it would change to say, following discussion, direction was given to special counsel to prepare a response, period.
That's what it
So
says.
that it's a sentence.
That seems fine
That's
to me.
exactly what we said.
Yeah, that seems fine to me.
Well, I'll do it in track changes so you guys can see.
conference.
But I think I would rather get the motion there so that it may be possible just to. So why don't we? So this is discussion. Do I need to? So let me write here. So it's as reflected in the March 4th, 2020 Planning Board video. Following discussion. And how did you
It
state
says
that, Lauren?
Mr. Chairman, it says, as reflected, I didn't write this letter.
Yep.
Ms. Goldberg did. It says, as reflected in the March 4, 2020 Planning Board video, following the discussion and direction to special counsel to prepare a response. And if you want to say, this is what she prepared, that's fine. But I say put a period.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I have to say I'm certainly willing to keep talking about this, but I understand what it is that you're trying to do, and I appreciate that the intent. And as a result, I suggested language that makes that a complete sentence. It is not in any way for me to...
Can you state that again?
Yes.
How you were going to...
As reflected in the March 4, 2020 Planning Board video,
Yep.
following the
Please hold on.
discussion, direction was given to special counsel to prepare a response, period.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Very good. I appreciate it.
Yep. Following the direction.
It's on the screen now.
Following the discussion.
Following the discussion, direction was given to special counsel to prepare. Was given to special counsel to prepare for a response.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm okay with that. Attorney O'Laughlin?
No, very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. So we're in the discussion phase of the motion. So can I change the statement, the motion, or do I need to make a new motion?
You have to make a new motion with that language.
Okay. So I motion to modify paragraph 2 on page 2 to state, as reflected in the March 4th, 2020 Planning Board video, following the discussion, direction was given to special counsel to prepare a response, period. And do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
And so that was Deb who seconded it. And is there any further discussion on this item? Okay, hearing no discussion, I'll now call the roll call vote as done throughout the night. So Dave Atkins
Nay.
and Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Chris Paff,
Nay.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. So that motion passes 3-2. And the second matter that came to my attention after reviewing the draft letter is the fact that the complainants, Christopher Paff and Dave Atkins, were asked if they had any evidence to support the allegations in their individual complaints, and each indicated that, with the exception of the information in the complaint form, they did not. So now I would entertain a motion that includes this information in the letter to the Attorney General by deleting the following portion of the second sentence of the first paragraph on page 2, which reads as follows. Review of that video will demonstrate the questions asked of the complainants by the chair, the responses given by the complainants, and end quote. And replacing it with, review of that video will clearly show that the chair asked each of the complainants if they had any evidence to support the allegations in their individual complaints, and each of the complainants indicated that, with the exception of the information in their complaint form, comma, they did not, end quote. The remainder of the sentence will remain as a separated sentence with adding the word occurred between the word discussion and with.
Mr. Chair, if you want me to be preparing this updated draft, I do not type as quickly as that, so I would need you to read it one more time.
Yeah, so it would say, so it would be replaced with review of that video will,
Yep, I got it.
will clearly show that the chair asked each of the complainants.
I'm up to if they had any information in addition to.
Yeah, so let me just start from the top so we don't miss anything. So, quote, review of that video will clearly show that the chair asked each of the complainants if they had any evidence to support the allegations in their individual complaints, and each of the complainants indicated that, with the exception of the information in their complaint form, comma, they did not, end quote. And then there would be, after that period, the remainder of the sentence will remain as a separate sentence with adding the word occurred between discussion and with. So it would be discussion occurred with.
Okay, I got it.
So I would entertain a motion to that effect.
I make a motion to make the changes as remarked by Brian.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
So the second's by Bill. And then any discussion with regards to this modification? Okay, so hearing none from the board members. So now I'd call a roll call vote. So Dave Atkins,
Nay?
Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Chris Paff,
Nay.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and then I am an aye as well. So that change passes as well. And the third and last matter that came to my attention after reviewing the draft letter was the fact that Attorney Thomas Ralph, representing Planning Board member Deborah Conant, stated that in response to the open meeting law complaints, he sent a written request to the town administrator on February 11th, 2020 for all information in the town's possession, gained either directly or indirectly, including all material in the possession of any appointed or elected member of the town regarding this matter. And that he didn't receive any information or response from the town. In the same regard, Attorney Thomas Ralph pressed the same request during that March 4th, 2020 meeting, when he once again requested any information in support of the allegations, and none was presented by the complainants or any town official on behalf of the town. So now I'd like to entertain a motion to include the following sentence at the end of the first paragraph on page 2 of the draft letter. And so this sentence would state, quote, Attorney Thomas Ralph, comma, representing board member Deborah Conant, comma, sent a written request to the town of Westwood on February 11th, 2020, requesting information in the town's possession, gained either directly or indirectly, comma, including all material in the possession of any appointed or elected member of the town, comma, regarding this matter, and no information was presented in response by the town. End stop. So the next sentence to be included is, Attorney Thomas Ralph pressed the same request during the planning board meeting on March 4th, 2020, and once again, no information was presented by the complainants or any town official on behalf of the town. So that's end quote. So now I'd like to entertain a motion to include these sentences.
And if you would, maybe repeat one more time for me so I can
Sure.
catch up.
Yep. So Attorney Thomas Ralph, and if you need me to slow down, just ask me to, and I'll do that
Yep.
what I'm reading now. So Attorney Thomas Ralph, representing board member Deborah Conant, sent a written request to the town of Westwood on February 11th, 2020, requesting information in the town's possession, comma, gained either directly or indirectly, comma, including all material in the possession of any appointed or elected member of the town regarding this matter, and no information was presented in response by the town. End stop. New sentence. Attorney Thomas Ralph pressed the same request during the planning board meeting on March 4th, 2020, and once again, no information was presented by the complainants or any town official on behalf of the town. End quote. And so now I'd like to entertain a motion for this.
I make a motion to add the additional language as stated by Brian Gorman related to the request made by Attorney Thomas Ralph for additional information from the town related to this complaint.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding this? So hearing no discussion, so now I'll move on to the roll call vote. So David Atkins,
Nay?
Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Chris Paff,
Nay.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and I vote aye also. So it's passes 3-2 to include those sentences. So at this point, are there any other amendments that any of the board members would like to make with regards to the draft letter from Attorney Goldberg?
I just have one comment, just for accuracy. My name is spelled wrong.
Oh, I
There's an
apologize
H.
for that.
That's okay. There's an H at the end of Deborah.
Okay. Thank you.
So are there any other amendments that any of the board member would like to make? And so everybody has had a chance to participate in reviewing this draft. So now that motions have been made, seconded, discussed, and passed to amend the draft letter to the Attorney General, given that this is a time-sensitive matter, I would entertain a motion to authorize Attorney Lauren Goldberg to draft a final letter with the amendments approved by the board tonight and forward the final letter upon her signature to the Attorney General on behalf of the Planning Board.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
So, I think that I've been, pretty clear that in my experience and based on my feeling about the way that the law is intended to apply, that a response, was required, and to the extent that there's been advice from your individual counsel that no response was required. I had indicated to you that I would prepare that for your signatures, and I don't really see that much has changed here. If you recall, I mentioned earlier that that I did think that there should be, I don't know the exact way to say it, that there should be some discussion about the allegations that were actually made, and that under the open meeting law, the
Counsel, you're wrong.
idea
Counsel, you're off base. You're off base. You're trying to tell
Please
the board
identify
that-
yourself.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, please continue. Mr. Chairman.
I bet, no,
Mr. Chair.
I interrupt respectfully. You're trying to tell the
Mr.
board.
No interruptions
Chairman?
without identifying yourself,
Mr.
please.
Chairman.
No, I would like to hear what Attorney O'Loughlin's response is.
With
Mr.
all
Chairman,
due
I was
respect.
not finished.
Counsel, with all due respect,
So
then I respectfully interrupt. Counsel, you're there to advise the board. That's what you said. You said you represented the board. If you represent the board, represent the board. You're not there to make their decision. They made their decision. Your function now
Actually, the
is
board has not made a decision. Actually, the board has
Yes,
not
they
made
did.
a
They
decision.
voted
No.
3-2 on three
They have
amendments.
not
They
made-
voted-
So I'm
No,
gonna-
we
let
haven't
me-
voted
let
on
me-
the actual.
Let me.
We have not voted
um,
on the actual item yet. And I
David,
would
I
appreciate
didn't-
if you would allow the town attorney to speak.
David, I have the with the teleconference. It's hard with people walking over each other, so I need to be able to give people the floor. So I just want to hear Thomas O'Loughlin. What is your statement to finish?
If council represents the board directs council what to do. If you vote on this motion, you tell council what to do. I give advice. I don't tell you what to do. You do, you're the client. So if council wants to give you advice versus this is what I tell people to do, that's much different. I don't tell anyone to do anything. I give you good advice. So if that's the direction we're going, and the motion that you put on the floor is to direct counsel that if you decide this, the board 3-2, and I agree with Mr. Atkins, I believe was the person that spoke based on voice, and if it's not, if it was someone else, I apologize. Then fine. If the board decides something different, so be it. But if I represented the board, you tell me to file that with the AG, what you want upon my signature, I'm going to do it as your attorney upon my signature. That's it.
Yeah, so my feeling is that
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Sure, I'll let you finish.
Chairman,
Sure.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I really wasn't finished speaking, and Mr. Laughlin did speak right over me, and I don't think that's very courteous.
Yeah, I'm letting you speak now, so please.
And in any event, I have to say, as a special counsel in this instance, like when serving as town council, which I do on a regular basis, my job is to counsel the board, and that's what I've been trying to do. I am perfectly comfortable with the board making any decision it wants. I understand the way that boards work, and I understand that the policy decisions that the board might make might be ones I do or I do not agree with. But I am telling you that in my experience, a response such as the one that the planning board has drafted would not typically be viewed as responsive. And so if the board would like to sign that, that's fine. But that is, and if the board wants me to sign it, that is fine. But I will also, state for the record that in my experience, this type of a response does not suffice. And my job is to protect the town and to assist the town in resolving this. And that's what I have been doing. Again,
No, I appreciate the draft. Thank you for that to review. So I motion to authorize Attorney Lauren Goldberg to draft a final letter with the amendments approved by the board tonight and forward the final letter upon her signature to the Attorney General on behalf of the Planning Board.
Second.
So do we have any further discussion?
Yes, Dave Atkins. I will not support this motion. I wonder if a resident had made a complaint like this, not just a member of the board, but if a resident had filed a complaint like this, that we would be not even deny the allegations, not offer any explanation, not attempt to engage in any kind of a discussion, but to allow this to simply go to the Attorney General's office and just see what happens is the height of irresponsibility. When I made the complaint, I did it because what I observed in the meeting, I thought was completely inappropriate, and I felt like I had to do something. I expected that we would have a discussion about that. I expected that other board members would say, "Oh, you misunderstood," or "We made a mistake," or whatever. We would see what we could do as a board to address the issues here, and that we would not simply ignore everything and turn it into a trial, because it's not a trial. So I can't support sending a letter like this because it's a complete lack of working together. And even coming into this meeting tonight, I kind of hoped, I said, we need to find a way for this board to work together, because we can't have this, we can't have 3-2 votes on things because people are disagreeing about stuff that's outside of the meeting or something. I don't know. Like, it's just, this is an opportunity to address and confront the issues, but it's not going to be that way because you've got all these attorneys coming in who are offering all their advice, and in the end of the day, you've got a response that is not a response. That is, it's a litigation of things. So I'm not going to support this.
Are there any further discussion?
Yeah, I would like to echo what Mr. Atkins said. As a resident, I feel completely ignored. And the fact that I'm on the planning board should be irrelevant. The allegations I made because I truly believed the process was violated. Thus far, I've heard no one say that's not what happened. There's been absolutely no response. That is the job of this board, to respond to its residents. And thus far, nothing has happened except a very
Christopher Coleman.
good deal
That's the
of
conference.
legal acrobatics. But nothing has, the whole spirit of this process has been completely ignored. Congratulations on your legalese and all your gymnastics and getting through this. But I hope the whole town is watching this, either live or tomorrow, because they're seeing exactly what I said happened that night. Procedures are ignored. And that's what's happening here. This whole spirit of open meeting violation law and the investigation and the whole process is being completely ignored. And it's offensive that what I had to say has gone uncommented on. And again, what Dave said, I completely agree. If this were any other resident in town, they would not have been allowed to dance around the issues like this. I will not support this letter going forward because it is not a response letter.
Okay. Any further discussion from the board? Okay, hearing nothing additional, so now I'll call a roll call vote. So Dave Atkins,
Nay.
Deborah Conant,
Sorry. Aye.
Chris Paff,
No.
Bill DeLay.
Aye.
Has
And
joined
I'm
the
an aye.
conference.
I'm an aye as well, so that passes 3-2. So now I would entertain a motion to adjourn. We've reached the end of our meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn.
And do we have a second?
Second.
And any discussion?
I would like not to adjourn, but to try to figure this out.
Any other discussion? Okay, so roll call to adjourn. Dave Atkins,
Aye.
Deborah Conant,
Aye.
Chris Paff,
No.
Bill DeLay,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. So the meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.